Ah, I'm live apparently. Hopefully. I'll wait for the other window to start talking. And then we'll know this is working. This will be volume and such. So I have to wait for it. It's starting up. A minute now. Almost. Kind of. Spinny thing. Spinny thing. Come on. You can do it. Volume. There we go. We do have volume. Okay, so we're in the game. Some chat window works, so we'll see if there's anything happens. I figure on this might be a bit of a mess. I don't have an agenda thing beyond the fact that I have to think about how to describe this polarization thing better. The fact that there's a feature of this field energy. So the key thing is we know there's a constant. So the speed of light is the constant. They all move the speed of light, all force. They all have, let's say, the same quanta of energy. They're all a thing moving the speed of light. They're all a fish of the same size moving the speed of light. Now the difference is that light, or stuff on the electromagnetic spectrum, is stuff that's polarized in individual rays. The individual rays are polarized and they're at a frequency, so they're quanta at a frequency. So you have some sort of, like I said, the polarization. I think it's this vertical horizontal. I think it's a frisbee thing, but maybe not. I have to work through that one. And frequency is visible light, and then you have the magnetic thing, which is just the polarization. No frequency involved or necessary. And so magnetism is much stronger as a force because it's making more of gravity relevant, in the sense that when you have two magnetic things, their polarization is complementary, and therefore they're being affected because there's more of the gravity has been converted into something they can recognize, something that they can gain acceleration from, where before a lot of the gravity missed them because it wasn't of a polarization they could recognize. It was a random. So by unrandomizing the gravity, you can make the gravity more effective if the matter is receptive to that kind of gravity. All right. The end result of all this is that, yes, you have this field of stuff moving the speed of light that creates this pressure field. Now, in the pressure field, obviously matter forms, which is this clump. Okay, and the clump it inevitably gets bigger because it blocks pressure now. It's able to absorb pressure by accelerating towards something, by pulling fish in that would have gone someplace else. It creates a low pressure essentially next to the other thing, and the other thing says, there's less fish this way, I'll go this way. Now there's not really less fish, there's just less fish of a certain polarization. So again, we have to get back to this polarizing thing. But you're not really changing the course of the quantum. So this would be one of the rules, that the quanta don't change course. So they do go where it doesn't look like they went. They aren't absorbed. What's absorbed is their character. Their polarization is kept by matter. So when matter accelerates, it's not accelerating because it actually absorbed more fish or a fish. It's accelerating because it absorbed the polarization of a fish going the way of the matter. So it replaced a fish going the wrong way with the wrong polarization, with a fish going the right way with the right polarization. It might be the wrong way with the right polarization, let's put it that way. So the matter is constructed of polarized, similar fish. So, okay, but the first rule is, okay, the quanta don't change. What's a way of saying they don't change direction? No, they don't change their where they're moving to, because it's better everybody to say that. They don't change where they're moving to. Where they're moving might even be enough. Well, anyway, but that's going to be a rule, is that you don't change the actual velocity. You don't change the vector that the quanta travels. You just relabel the quanta with a different polarization. So the matter keeps the polarization, and it gets rid of the polarization of some thing going the way it wants to go, but is the wrong fish. So yeah, so anyway, so this is going to be the tricky part to draw. It's always this three-dimensional thing. You know, it's hard to, sometimes the two just isn't good enough to really explain it. I mean, you can do the fabric thing for, you know, Einstein's metaphor, but the fabric thing doesn't work at all when you convert it to 3 dimensions. So it's not a very good metaphor or analogy, because it totally breaks down when you 3-dimensionalize it. And I don't want to create analogies or metaphors that do that. All right. So, I mean, fish are good because fish can move in 3 dimensions. So it's not a problem to make fish 3-dimensional. And we're just going based on interactions that are kinetic. So it should be dissectable that there are these interactions that take place where 2 things come into each other and they have a difference. And the difference is transferred, meaning this thing now goes red, this thing turns into red, and this thing turns into black. So you have the kinetic balls hitting, and let's say you could paint them red and blue. So let's say you had the kinetic balls bouncing, you know, they were painted red and blue. In real space, most of these interactions just end up with the blue thing traveling straight through and the red thing traveling straight through. So, you know, it's not like the real world that we have with a kinetic ball, because we know they are bouncing off of each other. Well, in real kinetics, they don't bounce off of each other that same way. They don't retain there's no conversion of polarization. So they tend to go through each other, in the sense that the polarization of the thing going this way ends up continuing to go this way. And it's the unusual case where they bounce off of each other and this polarization goes this way. They exchange the polarization. So the point is that that's what's taking place. So another rule is going to be, or close to a rule, let's say, the pieces of a rule is going to be that everything we see as matter is a pattern of polarization, and it's the pattern that moves. There's no real substance moving, in the sense that the field is always moving, but what's being exchanged is polarization, and that polarization's location is changing. So it's a pattern that's moving, not the stuff. The stuff is always moving, but it's through those interactions that the pattern has the appearance of movement. So it's the movement of a pattern, a pattern of polarization. So polarization in a position. So if you froze the universe at any one place, at any one second, you know, just you could freeze everything, there would be a pattern that existed. The quanta here would be going this way, let's say, and this quanta is going this way, and everything would be in a location, and it would have a direction. And the point is that if I froze it a second later, what happened was things did bang into each other, and the positions of the polarization transferred to things going in another direction. So the direction that the polarization, this black polarization, was going this way, and now it's going to be going this way, something like that. So the polarization changed. Everything still moved on its straight line vectors, so all the little bits still did all their little bit stuff, and all they did was change color, so to speak, if we use color as a representation of polarization. So that should be a usable analogy, is to convert polarization into color. And I could have like 15 colors to start with, but let's just say there could be 600 colors. So it could be 600 different polarizations. It could be an infinite number of polarizations. But the point is that we know the ones that are relevant are the two opposites, the vertical and its opposite, which is horizontal, and that those are only a quarter turn removed from each other. So that's the interesting thing, is that the opposite has, you know, two locations essentially in the 360. So the opposite of this, the opposite isn't like what you think of an opposite, which is a complete flip. The opposite's only a quarter turn when it comes to polarization. The complete turn would be in completely useless. This would be indistinguishable from this. So the opposite is the same, and it's only when you do the quarter thing that you get a true opposite, in the sense that it has a completely distinct and different function. So that's going to be another one of these rules, is that polarization is converted on a quarter turn. So opposite, whatever that means, I'll put that in quotes because who knows what that means, but opposite polarization only requires 1/4 turn. Okay. And like I said, light, the only thing distinctive about light is that it has the fact that to be absorbed by an electron, to be held in a pattern, you have to replace things two at a time. You can't replace things. So let's say the only way the thing can orbit is that the two things have to have the same polarization that are opposite each other. They have different polarization. They won't be gravitationally rigid. They won't create the force necessary between them to maintain their relationship in space. Now, I would argue that relationship is really being maintained. It's more complicated, because you have to take it all the way back to the single individual fish. And that's where it gets really complicated, because you can't make a single individual fish obviously gravitational. Something bangs into it and just the kinetic thing. So the single fish can't do anything. You have to have the two fish to slow down the process enough, the process of interaction, to make it meaningful to the third thing over here that's not going to get the force, because the force has been slowed down by these interactions. Technically, slowed down is dangerous. It's dangerous to get into the time argument in the middle of this argument, so I think I'll try to avoid that for now. And but anyway, so I'm a step, at least 2 steps, 3 steps away from the foundation, the real thing that's happening when I talk about the orbits. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, this is something physicists sort of envision, is this atom with things trapped either by, I would say, obviously the magnetic force, but I mean the magnetic force is just gravity polarized, so it's just gravity magnified. It's interesting that the word magnetism came from Magnesia or something, you know, some country's name, and the word magnification had another different source. And it's just kind of funny that those two words are essentially appropriate in the sense that magnetism is a magnification of gravity, which is really interesting. Coincidence thing. But anyway, lots of those. In a world full of many, many permutations, you do have many, many coincidences. Yes, there's many, many events. You'll have many, many coincidences. So anyway, the frequency thing is just dependent on the fact that these two things have to be oriented to each other, and they have to be, like I said, I should use two black pens, and then you'll get that they have to be of the same polarization to be in these relationships. And I would say the relationships are position relationships. It's not so much about the orbit thing as it is the position thing. And so things have a rigid position in the sense that if this changes, this has to change. If this stays the same, then this can stay the same. That kind of thing. It's that kind of rule. That if you break one piece of this, then you'll break this other piece. Once they're established as a position relationship, any disruption of that position will disrupt the entire group of things that are positioned. So it's like thinking about magnets trapped by magnets. So if I take a bunch of little magnets and I keep them all north side up, they'll all repel each other. And I can put them in a field where they're all annoying each other and they're kind of suspended in positions. I could have something in the center, I could have 5 of them circling, and they'll stay an equidistant from each other. And if I try to push one together, it'll move all the other magnets. So if I create a field that's pushing down and also a field that's pushing out, so I have a magnet on, how to describe that? Yeah, I just keep all them north facing. And I just put them, I arrange them. You can figure that I can have repulsive force on the outside, repulsive force on the inside, and I can trap the layer in the middle. And the layer in the middle, if I move any of them, it'll move all of them. So any change to those position relationships will reposition all of the players. So if I pull one out, if there's 6 and I pull one out, the 5 will readjust themselves to balance the position. So I think that's what's happening. So it's a balancing of position. This is going to be some kind of a rule. Position. I'll draw myself a little picture. And but that's really what's holding atoms together. And so they're not doing as much. Technically, there's pieces going in and out all the time, so there's all kinds of movement that we could say, hey, they're moving. But I don't think they're really moving in the sense that the positions, the identity of what's at this location and this location stays the same. They're only replaced by things that are the same. So something else can come in and replace this with the same thing. But if it replaces it with something different, that leads to this leaving. And it creates a repositioning, a change in the energy, the mass of the electron, or whatever it is I'm saying is trapping these things or keeping them in their positions. All right, so that was, it gets to the point that I'm trying to make. So that's where we get the 2 thing. That's where the dependency on the number 2. So that's one of these rules for light. Light is the only thing that makes light distinctive from the rest of the gravity. It's just gravity. It's just that this gravity, so instead of a stream of, let's say it is a stream of, it goes red, and then there's a black one, and then there's a green one, and then there's a blue one and a pink one. The point is that at these specific locations that are equidistant from each other, there's always a black one. That would be a ray of light. Now it still has green, blue, pink ones in the stream, but they're not relevant. So you can have a radio wave that's 3 miles long. I mean, the distance between the 2 blacks will be 3 miles distinct. So the 2 black ones are 3 miles away from each other. Now there's a bunch of gravitons in between of all different colors, but this pattern is 3 miles. This black one is exactly 3 miles from this black one, and the next black one is exactly 3 miles from that black one, and that's a radio wave. and the precision of the universe is complete. I mean, it doesn't make errors. It doesn't shave a little too little off, or too much here, too much. So there's no, as much as it sounds impossible that something could be traveling 3 miles, hit the same electron at exactly the right time, and all this kind of, yes, that's exactly what's happening. It's that precise. The universe doesn't have any fundamental error code. It doesn't have the capacity to make an error. It's so, the structure is so simple, and the rules are so rigid that it can't make errors. I mean, yeah, it made an error by having matter in the first place. I mean, it made a philosophical error, I mean, a logical error, but it doesn't make physical errors. All right, anyway. So light is, it needs to do the pattern thing of the two thing. I don't know how to say that, but light is the two thing. There's got to be two of them to create a capture and release. I guess that's a good way to say it. And what you're capturing and releasing is the polarization. Okay, so you're let's see how to describe that. Let's say there's two things are here, and now I hit one of these out with the, and I put the wrong color here. Position-wise, this would now be pushing against its next position would be here, or its next position be here. You know, the position would be going in this, the idea of a circle, but it's not really doing that. But it's going from position to position. And that vector is different than its actual pointing vector. So it's actually thinks it's going here, but the field is going to force it to go here. So it's going to end up here instead of end up here because of the field pressure. Okay, that's going to replace it. So it's going to, as it goes down here, it gets replaced by somebody that's actually going the right way. Yeah, as funny as that sounds. But the point is once it loses its partner, it leaves from wherever it lost it from. So that can be also a cause for diffraction or something. Maybe. But it's probably the partners that are the ones, it's the others that are probably getting affected. Well, I won't get into that because that's so complicated. All right, so let's just try to keep it simple, stupid. All right, so the two thing, that's, I'm just saying I'm pretty certain, like it's one of the 90% sure-y kind of things. Okay, that the reason why the frequency thing is important in light, especially visible light, because that's the one most electrons are really reactive to. And clearly, in different circumstances, they're reactive to these, you know, at different energy levels. They're definitely reactive to different kinds of different frequencies of photons. So radio wave photons, ones that have a long frequency, we don't have metal in us. So we can argue that metal probably has some big orbits in it. You know, some big, or else the positions move very slowly. The stuff changes position slowly or something like that, some logic like that, where the atoms itself rotate slowly, slowly enough where you need 3 miles of time at the speed of light for the rotation to get to the right position, for the second one to show up and keep the balance. So the idea is something arrives and it goes position, position, position. Its identity moves in the circle. It's constantly replaced, but the identity of black stays. And this new black shows up just when they're opposite, and now they're a tied pair. Now they're bound to each other with a stronger force. So now it's harder to disrupt it. So this becomes the default condition, and it requires something disruptive to break it. It won't just fall apart on its own. It'll stay this way until something breaks it. So it has a breaking, it establishes a breaking force. an energy level required to break it. All right. So yeah, so that explains why frequency is relevant. Now, polarization, that ends up being the thing where in a conversation you're really talking about the creation of filters. So you're creating bars, and we can understand that bars would create filters to things going this way. So bars going vertical would create filters against stuff going this way, and they would allow things going this way. And so that's the conceptually what an atom creates. So when you create one of these things that has the same polarization, this is essentially starting to create your bars, your limit on what can pass. Now that might have to do with the size again, in the sense that you make an aperture smaller, you're just blocking things that are shorter and versus things that are bigger. So polarization could be a function of size. I haven't thought that through all the way. Changing polarization from an orientation to a size. The only trick with size is that would mean photons should have different. You would think that things of different size would have different energy. Now, it could be that a photon can have, it wouldn't matter its size, that it could have a volume, a density issue. It has the same density, it just comes in a bigger, looser configuration. So the photon could be this big, or the photon could be this big. And it has exactly the same energy in the sense that its actual mass is the same. So it's like the sun is really vaporous as a mass. That's why it only has 7 times the gravity of the surface of Earth on the surface of the sun, even though the sun's thousands of times heavier in total mass than the Earth. It's just that it's not as dense. It's more massive, but it has a larger volume that the mass is spread out over. So it could be that that's what polarization is. So I'll put that as a could be, that polarization is really a size filter. I mean, I still prefer this bar idea, the horizontal, because it does create that trick of the perpendicular. So it seems more obvious that it has to be something that when you turn it perpendicularly, because the force emanated from electricity flowing in a wire is perpendicular to the velocity of the electric charge. So if the electricity is moving that way, the charge emanates perpendicular to that velocity, that acceleration, technically. So I don't think there's a way of doing that with a size filter, because a size filter, no matter which way you turned it, how would it know what perpendicular is? I mean, perpendicular would look exactly like horizontal. So I think polarization has to be horizontal and perpendicular. So I'll write that down. Probably horizontal and vertical, not just size. Okay. You really do have to get some of the not all, but you have to get the substance of these rules right before you can really start doing this. And that's the mistake they made in physics, is they started writing the whole story and they only had little pieces of the foundation, and that's where they ended up with all this wave crap and the unicorns that they've been, their whole spooky action at a distance and all the rest of it. It's all because they got these foundations wrong, because they weren't careful enough in establishing the rules. Let's see, who is that funny icon? Oh, it's Piero again. The Piero. Did he find work yet? He's got to find a job for me.
Nope, still looking. But it takes a couple months, even if I find one, because they do it like 3 or 4 rounds of interviews. So
Yeah. Well.
But I rolled out. I had a little bit of retirement left, so I've rolled that out. Hopefully, I won't spend the part I will owe in taxes. And no, there's a lot of jobs though. In fact, I mean, you should look. There's all kinds of contracting sites of every kind. There's people that want ridiculously cheap rates for little things, and you can find them. And there's a lot of work, but people are weird about it. But if you just keep looking and take it like dating, it's like if you don't get chosen, who gives a fuck? You go, it's like a statistics thing. There's a lot of work right now, but of course everybody wants to pay less. But for me, that's fine because I'm remote, so it's like it's a big discount. But
Yeah, well, I would think I could be able to get. I mean, the only work I could get it, I'd end up getting a job with like some small company. Like I said, I'd end up, I'd make a deal, and I'd say, look, I'll work for nothing, and you just pay me when the project's done, right? And if you use it, so if it works out, then you're happy and I'm happy, and
yeah,
nobody has to risk anything, right? But yeah, it always turned out that they were going down the toilet anyway.
yeah.
And they end
No,
up,
that's very common. Yeah,
it's like I created something kind of great and it never went. It's like I still have this program somewhere, where you could, I thought was much better than PDF files, but you could write a word, not a word, a word pad, the RTF files, the rich text format.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could create that using an HTML form. So it would create a perfect, rich text format document with all the formatting, and you just punched it into, and it was really good for like business sites doing inventory, because then they could do their inventory in a web browser, and create a rich text document.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was a good interchangeable format.
yeah, and I just thought it's not as rigid as PDF. Like, you don't have all this
Right.
encryption crap and all the
Well,
rest.
you know what the thing is now is Jason is taking over.
Yeah, well, I just think that's a lot of extra code. That's the only problem.
Well, the nice thing about
hate,
Jason, it's
hate
just a
templates.
JavaScript object. So from JavaScript, it's just like, yeah, JavaScript object. I mean, it's easy. So,
Well, I know, but you know that the interpreter is it's still got to load all that JSON.
it's got to parse it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still
But everything's doing it.
it's
So it's just,
it's still a little bit heavy. Now, once the
well,
browser does it for every web page, once it does establish it as
that's
an actual
true.
function, when those functions become real JavaScript functions, well,
Yeah.
then you might have enough efficiency for me to say, yeah, okay, I'll play.
Yeah, but the thing is, with all the HTTP requests, however you're getting it, it goes through text, XML there. Also, JavaScript is pretty quick. It's a pretty efficient parsing thing. I mean, the JSON. So, what a big thing is that's saleable is Angular JavaScript application. JavaScript is like this full programming language now, almost ECMA 6. What does ECMA stand for? Anyway, ECMA 6 is the version 6 of the JavaScript, and Angular is this system. It's pretty cool too. It makes things. It's for making whole applications.
Well, that's I've played a little bit with the stuff that kind of it does all the stuff Flash does.
Right.
You can do the bouncing ball kind of crap and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of those Angular, React.
Right, but it has, it isn't really modular yet, in the sense that you really do have to build it from the ground up. So all you're given is the crudest of tools.
Right.
And so now, if you want to make something complex, you're going to have to put all.
No, but that's what Angular is. Angular is the higher level stuff. On the other hand, it's considered opinionated, so you could hate the way it does stuff, right? But it's a whole system. But I don't actually like the whole systems. I've been using Angular because with Angular, what you can do, or how it seems, is you just create new HTML tags, right? Like you have your message list that you've maintained, that would be an HTML tag. Anybody could just put that tag in their page. It would be, in Mentam's messages, and then everything else would be built into it to go to your website or however it did what it did. And Angular does that, but you have to build things the way it likes, which is a pretty good way. But there's a better thing now. I'm looking at Polymer, which is all about the fact that that's the way the standard is going, right? The browsers are have this web components idea where basically you build your own tags, you write your own JavaScript behind all the behind
I
all.
know, but I'm just saying that did you know that that isn't terribly efficient if you're making a lot of quick requests? Then it would have to do all that interpretation of all that code all over again. So I'm just saying that that's why I want there to be something modular in the sense that it's built in. So the browser loads it
Yeah,
once, you know what I'm saying? And it's
yeah,
already loaded and it's automatically part of the HTML code, essentially. I mean, everything should migrate
yeah.
into the HTML. That's what my argument would be, is that JavaScript essentially should be consumed by HTML, and
Well, that's kind of
HTML.
what web components is. I mean, JavaScript is the programming language, but really what you build is special tags.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that I would
Instead
rather.
of having a web counter the
I
way
just
we've
want
done it.
more built-in tags. Is all I guess I'm arguing for. Is that the one thing should be rich.
But the thing is, it's kind
Okay,
of like that. Because once you load a tag, you have it. And they can start shipping more and more of tags, that people are widely utilizing. So I think it goes in
I
that direction.
understand, but that's still like me just writing a JS file. The point is that it still has to load the new JS file. So I'm still going to
I
argue.
don't understand why that bugs you. I mean, even
Well,
if
well, I'm
it's
just saying that in processing time, it bugs me in the sense that the functions keep reloading the same function. Like I said, if you're making
but no,
if you're making 5-second interval requests, you know, it's just
but wait, do you know
gonna
this?
bog down the system. So if this was a request you
Yeah,
make once every hour, well, fine, but it's not going to work. When you're doing it every 5 seconds, or
but
when you're doing
Gary,
it with a million requests.
okay, but Gary, the thing is, that's if you put your JavaScript just right in the HTML page, but if you put it in its own JS file and import it with a script tag, the browsers are smart enough to save that, and it will never get it again until it changes.
Well, I
So
know,
that's
but
the
part of that is almost malicious too, because yeah, that's a real problem I had when I was playing with this little webcam stuff. Is because you can't even, you used to be able to tag an image and say, "Give me the new version," right? So it had like new
right,
version. You said you actually typed the word "new version" or something, and that
right.
actually worked. And now you have to sit there and put a time code on it. So now you have to to me that's very bulky to ask for me to ask what time it is. That's a request that is expensive. You know what I mean?
Because you're
And
changing the image.
I'm just saying, yeah, just to change, just an update an image. Now I'm forced to do code that's even more complicated than say 60 lines of my JavaScript. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm that one
Right.
request for the time is just a total nuisance. Why bog the browser down to go find out what time it is? Okay, because I just want the new image. I don't want you to even look at the new image. I just want you to load it. You know what I mean? Don't even test it.
Yeah.
Don't taste it. Don't do anything. Just give me the new one. Okay? I mean, they did that because I guess people were malicious in the sense that all these people were running their web pages and saying, make everything new.
If you were interested in trying to do this,
They would never allow people to cache anything, because they wanted to update their ads and they wanted to do all that crap. And so it irritates me that a perfectly good function was destroyed because, again, the malicious assholes had to ruin it.
have have you seen? Because the interesting thing is like there's this sort of catch can world. A few websites with where they, you'll go on there and somebody like probably a young kid is like, I have $500. I want you to make me a video game and it be 3D and But then again, some people are just like, I got a fucking database. I need to convert it into this other fucking database. I'm panicking. I'll pay 1,000. You know what I mean? And it's actually an interesting hunting ground, but because I need steady work, I haven't looked a lot there. But frankly, I'm into that. I'm into the people that can't afford the big computing and things are getting easier and you can do this kind of
Yeah, well,
stuff.
I'm sort of like I said, I did do it. I
I
mean,
think Elance.
I'm just saying, I just never
No,
made
but I'm
any
saying
money.
there's some websites with a lot of
I
leads.
never made any money. That was the problem with it. So,
Well, that's the problem with those kind of sites, right? But because other than that, like what I face is I can do anything learn new languages and stuff. But of course, that's not what people want. They're like, do you know this or do you know that? And so it just takes a long time to find.
Well, I'm just saying, if you find a job where you need a little, you need somebody to do a little out JavaScript work or something, just keeping in mind
Well,
that.
I have my business, which I'm now back working for, and in a way, I do keep doing that kind of stuff. I'm totally, I've already thought of that. I would give you a chance if I had, but basically, it's like, yeah, if I do something for my business, or if I get a contract. I mean, I have some people I've been working with to try to get contracts for my business, because mostly my business, I work on these ideas, and I but really it's just like a shingle, right? And I sell myself like an individual. But sometimes it's my company that did the contract, and sometimes it's kind of abstract of like whether or not, it's me as an individual. But yeah, no, because that's what I really want. I'm from sort of people that can do it, and hackers, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And
Yeah,
in a
I
lot
don't
of
do
senses.
anything. I can do stuff pretty. I just don't waste any time on the pretty stuff because I'm just trying to get the function. So I mean, I think I've done some stuff that's really interesting. Like I said, the whole idea of
Yeah, no, I've seen your stuff for
doing
a little bit.
client side message boards. The substance of the work is done on the client side. It's pretty interesting.
Well, the thing is, what I think, what I would think as a professional would be good, but you don't have to do this, because if you can make useful code, then that's probably good enough. But yeah, the client side has now blossomed. Doing things on the client side, there's things like IndexedDB and local storage where you can put megabytes, even gigabytes on the client machine. So what we do now is like you write all of that. Now there's still HTML because that's your layout language. So it's very familiar, but you ramp up what you do on the client side. You don't just have
I like that.
functions. You
Yeah, well,
take over the whole page is my point. You take over the
yeah,
whole fucking thing.
Firefox gave you a taste of that because with the whole grease monkey thing,
No, but that's
there was
what
a
it is
time
now.
when you could actually put stuff. You could actually put images on the
No,
client's
but Grease Monkey,
computer,
okay, Grease
and that
Monkey's
was
dying.
brilliant. What?
Grease Monkey itself is dying, but the model has won. That's Chrome plugins are Grease Monkey built in. Firefox sucks, but I haven't looked at it for like a year and a half, but they have basically a Grease Monkey make your plugin in JavaScript. But who cares about those? I was playing with those because web pages are basically these Grease Monkey-ish kind of things. So
Well,
I mean,
I just meant the only point I wanted to get to was the fact that you could actually store images and
yeah,
hard content
totally.
on the client hard
Yeah,
drive.
hundreds of
Okay, I mean,
megabytes before it even
you
warns
had
you.
on their hard drive, so
Yeah,
it's when they came back to visit your site, you weren't serving it off the
yeah.
internet. You were
No,
just serving it off their
yeah.
hard drive, which
No,
is
and I'm
so much
telling you,
more
dude,
efficient.
have you even seen this? There was WebSQL, but it got obsoleted. So you have a full SQL database you could store stuff into, but SQL kind of sucks. And now there's an IndexedDB that's easier. You basically just store JSON structures to it, and it can have hundreds of megabytes. It's a full database indexed. You could have 100 megabytes and search for things really quickly, all in the browser platform. So I mean, there's really nothing. Plus, you got WebSockets
Well,
now.
I know they made cookies bigger now too, so you can cram a lot of crap
Oh,
in.
right, cookies. Yeah, but cookies are so obsolete because with both the other
Well,
thing
I'm
is
just saying,
there's
but
local storage.
I think they're expanding what you can put in them. So I'm just saying that
Yes.
if you can put image files in a cookie, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, but you don't need to because, for example, okay, with cookies, there's a thing called local storage where you can local storage store, you give it a key name, and there's another one called session storage. So the local storage will last forever when that guy is at your website. Just it is a cookie, but it's a super cookie because it could be a megabyte of binary data of anything. And then a session storage, of course, is you close your browser and it goes away. Same thing. So how easy is that? You go local storage, square brackets, the name of my special thing, and it can be an image. It can be, I'm pretty sure it can actually even be an image object. Like once you actually declare the JavaScript image object, I think you can even store it like that, but I'm sure you can store the bits, and convert it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, even if you can't replace it with a different image, I
I'm
mean,
telling you, shit tons of stuff have happened in the last 3 or 4 years as they made JavaScript like a full on.
Yeah,
thing.
I just don't like the whole JSON interface. So I mean, that's my only gripe with it
But
is I don't.
you're spoiled because you never had to deal with XML or the other ones. You've avoided that. You've made these embedded things in the pages, and it turns out if you're storing stuff to databases, it's fucking a lot easier. Like than SQL. Have you ever done SQL shit?
Well, I've done it in the sense that
Fucking
I've
pain in the
made a
ass.
database, but yeah,
Right.
I have no love at all for it, and
No,
I
exactly
mean because
not.
you can't. It's almost a
So whatever you think of
it's almost
JSON,
a dated. You know what I mean? The
yeah,
whole tab thing,
whatever you think of
everything. The
JSON,
structure of the database is so
yeah,
retarded. You're
it's a
just like,
table, no depth, no
well, who
nesting.
wants to even deal with a database that's so fucking retarded?
Right. So JSON, even if you hate it, what I'm saying is one key to escaping the SQL
Well,
world.
I don't hate it. I'm just saying that I'm probably going to end up migrating to learning it just because I'm going to be forced to, but I just don't like the fact that it's made to do everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's grabbing your keystrokes. It's doing a lot of things that, you know, it's called sending lots of interrupts. It's just kind
No,
of,
not JSON.
well, yeah, it is.
Well, we're having a confusion here. JSON is just a way of saving the data so it looks like a JavaScript, curly bracket
Well, I know,
structure.
but to read the JSON, it has to load its own.
Oh, right. Yeah, you were talking about that. No, that's true because it's text and it has to
Right.
parse it.
So
It
I
has
mean,
to parse
it
it.
has to load its own interpreter, so to speak. you know, so
Yeah.
it's either JSON on or JSON off. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. I'd rather.
Well,
I
I've
mean,
decided I need to make a website because really having jobs, I need to get one now, but a temporary one would be great contracting. So really the only security is having some sort of a business, but I don't know if I ever told you. So I've got this program I made years ago where you give it 6 images and then it breaks up all the images and prints them on a paper and then you fold it. I'm
right.
gonna do that, motherfucker. And because you could take these things and put them on a Christmas light, they perfectly fit snug on a Christmas light, and it's safe because they don't touch the light. It's a
Well,
little,
they're LEDs now anyway, right?
yeah,
So
and it's the little kind, and it doesn't touch it anyway. And because I don't even care if I make $100 or $50. I figured I put up a website where you can upload your pictures. It'll put the page up. You could print out and cut it yourself. And if you're lazy, because Americans are lazy, good for them, then like $1 a piece, and I'll fold them because it takes a few minutes to fold them, and I could get kids to fold them. And that would never make much money, but even if it made $1,000 or something. On the other hand, if there were 20,000 of them ordered, it's just a matter of hiring enough people. You just have to teach them how to fold. It's the simplest origami in the world. Everything's
yeah,
45
no,
degrees.
well, you just I mean that's I mean I sort of had the same perception that if I tried a lot of different things, that
Yeah.
something would work and that I'd get something off the ground. But I really just haven't found the. I hate selling things. I hate
Yep.
dealing with the
No,
public.
me
So,
too. And I
I mean,
struggle with
I feel like
business partners.
I just want to peel potatoes or something. I just want some simple mission statement. And you pay me to do that, and I can make enough money to
But
live.
even if you're going to peel potatoes, then somebody has to go find someone that needs to peel. You need a business person, and that's one thing I've struggled with. And my wife has helped me with the contracting stuff, so maybe we can do that. But like this origami thing, I figured, well, I could put that out there because I have all of it, and I could just throw together a little website. And
Well,
I
yeah,
figure,
and just to know that, yeah, you never know what it could turn into. So but you
just to
have
get
to do it.
feedback.
You have to be in it to win it, kind of thing.
Well,
So,
what I really want to do is a simple games, and then get feedback on the games. And if I would do anything just to make a living really about the games, that would be good enough. But what I'd like to do is, you simulate different little villages so you could have IRV or not IRV. You could simulate because when
well,
people are in,
that's the next step for me. Is actually, but just with this HTML5, you can do this video thing so well
yeah,
that,
that's one of
and
the
you can
big
have
ones.
new videos load, and they load pretty quickly. You know what I mean? So you can
Yeah, right
basically,
off a file.
so I'm going to basically try to make
And you can seek
I'm going
now.
to make composite videos. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And like a game board. It's like you roll the dice and the video tells you what your next move is. What
yeah.
happens to you. So I'm just going to try to make a scene game kind of thing where it goes through a logical argument, or it goes through like, you're
Right.
born a fly and this is what a fly does, and then the fly dies, and you know what I mean. So some kind of, I'm going to relate it to my philosophy, but I'm just going to try to use
Are you
because
kind of
it
talking
works
like,
so
let's say it
well.
was like a choose your own adventure novel, but it'll be with videos,
Yeah,
multiple
yeah. And
videos queued up.
as long as you keep them, modest in terms of the resolution, these videos play quite well. I mean, they load fast enough where it's almost seamless. You can jump from
Yeah.
one clip to another clip, and it's pretty seamless.
No, and I played with them, and this was a couple years ago, so I imagine it's even more mature. But two, if you load the page, you can start buffering a bunch of them, and if they're less resolution, then it'll work even better. But even if they're normal resolution, I mean, it's really just a matter of, it'll work
Yeah,
in
no,
the
I'm
sense
just
that
saying
they'll all be buffering.
it's doable. Is all I'm saying. So
But you're absolutely right. If you go do a 244 or whatever, you could get 8 of them up there, and a normal computer, they'll all be loading faster than they could play any one of them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's like I said, it's not really ready for prime time HD wise, but I mean,
right.
it's definitely good for.
I don't really like HD that much. I'm constantly moving my
Yeah, yeah.
videos down to
It's right. And
244.
YouTube just keeps forcing it, and I'm like, especially on my tablet, right?
Yeah,
It's the aggravation it's causing me because it keeps
yeah.
trying to play the HD video. And I keep saying, "What the fuck?
I
It's a
know. Even on
tablet,
my
for
monitor
goddamn!
here.
It's a tablet. It can't do that. Okay, it's on Wi-Fi, and there's a shitty connection.
I
So quit
know.
doing
And
that."
the plugin knows how big your screen is, so why would it over resolute that? I don't get it. Um, doesn't seem real smart, and it is expensive to send four
Yeah, and
times
you're
as
just
much
saying,
video
why
as you.
they make 15 different versions of my damn video? Why don't they make an MP3?
Well, yeah, that's for sure true.
It was just like
Or
I just
forget that.
sometimes all I
Forget
feel
that.
like is submit.
The HTML5. What is that thing? WebMD or something?
No, it's
WebT. WebM. That's a
WebM.
great thing. Have you noticed those are small? You can seek.
Yeah, it was a little bit tricky, because I had to
Why
do
is
that.
nobody using them? It's because corporate bullshit, really. It's
Well,
been around 5 or 6 years
that's the
now.
one that's actually sort of free of corporate bullshit. Because it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
They had a whole
No, and
lawsuit
that's why no
about it.
one uses it, I'm saying. They're not quite
Right,
used.
right,
I
right.
mean,
No,
all the
but nobody
browsers
owns it.
support it.
Nobody clearly owns it, so it's kind of left in this no man's
But
land.
why is, yeah, I don't really, well,
I don't
they
know
have,
why Firefox is still doing MP4s on, when it could play the WebM. So when I give it a choice, it'll always do MP4.
I interviewed at Mozilla.
I have to upload both. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah,
you want to load a video to play in a website, you have to load both an MP4 and a WebM to cover all the browsers that are out
yeah,
there. So
yeah.
it won't be covered unless you
Right,
have both files available. So it is a little
right.
bit of a pain in the ass.
But here's the thing about Mozilla. Okay, I like Mozilla, but frankly, they're falling behind. I interviewed at Mozilla about 5 months ago before I took this one job I just lost, and they seem like a bunch of bozos. The way the programming questions they asked and stuff, and their thing is getting buggy, and they're not going to support a lot of HTML5. They've already decided you can just use the polyfills, and they get a lot of money. They're a charity that people give them money, but they're really falling behind. It's sad.
Yeah, I was a
Uh,
little irritated to see how many of the video functions they're not supporting.
yeah.
And you're just like, well, gee, it'd be nice to be able to control the speed of the
I know because I
like
was
that.
dedicated to them. Like always support Firefox. That's a good baseline.
Well,
And
it's
anything.
what I still use. So I mean, I still use it for most of. Like I say, well, if it works
Well,
in
I always run
Firefox,
both of them, but I mean, they're really slow. On the other hand, there's these things they call them polyfills now that'll make every browser within a few versions do it. Like if there's no trim function, it just, in JavaScript, it just sets trim equal my function to do it. It might be a little slower than being built in. But so with that, you can get all the Firefox, Opera, Chrome, and IE is fucked. But who cares? There's the Edge, and Edge is actually keeping up, it looks like, with the standards of the rest of them. But who cares about the Microsoft one? But you can, so with the polyfill stuff, so like with Angular and stuff that comes for that, or this Polymer thing I mentioned, they are all, for example, there's a great new thing in HTML5 called HTML includes, where you go link, import, and you can include an HTML page, including its scripts and everything, and they'll actually get run, which never quite happened before. And so it's like an include, and Firefox doesn't support it. They've come out saying they'll never support it, but it doesn't matter because there's a polyfill that does it efficiently, because with
Yeah,
Ajax you can
well,
simulate
it
it.
is kind of a gray area, the whole, because there was a point where you could almost spider the internet through Firefox.
Yeah.
Where I could create an internet spider that ran in the browser, which was a little bit weird, where I could just request web pages and Firefox would do it for me. You know what I mean? I didn't have to go through my server.
You can still do that.
And that was kind of bizarre.
You could still do that more and more. Like
Well,
one of
I'm
the
just saying, yeah, you can do it. I'm just saying that, that is kind of it's a messy area because it's lots of room for people to be malicious with that kind of power.
Oh, totally, yeah, no, but they're not don't seem worried about that at all now. There's a lot of sort of security concerns that seem to have gone by the wayside. Not that the security's bad, but in terms of the mayhem of allowing all this stuff. But like, that's the thing I've been waiting for, WebRTC, where it's peer-to-peer Skype type stuff. So the browsers can do video just between another. And the amazing thing, of course, is I'm behind a firewall deep behind my Time Warner. You're behind, and yet with the browser, all you need is a common location, and then it'll make the tunnel between the two of you, and then boom, it's you and you. And that's great. On the other hand, it's also great and dangerous because people can have private Skypes, right? The government goes to Skype and it taps that conversation. Really hard to tap two browsers talking randomly across the internet.
Right. Well, Firefox already supports that. They just
so does Chrome. No, that's coming, but not the whole. It's not. You know what? There is
not
no
rich enough yet because you can't make a room. So if
they've all support it, but there's no final WebRTC standard, so it's still going to change. That's the state of this one. It's not a matter of them supporting
it. Really doesn't have any. It only has use for that person-to-person thing. I'm just saying it doesn't have any use in the sense I can't make a room out of it, and that's what I want to do with it.
Well, no, people are working on that too. So there's two ways to do that. One, again, if you use really compressed thumbnailish video, you might be able to do it. But with a lot of people, what you need is then a server, but the server can also talk WebRTC and it will save the exponential fan out. You know what I mean? Everybody will send it. So you will still have a server for a room, but it's not really doing that much work.
Well, that's all I'm saying is you just need a room for it to all be thrown into. So
I was just loading the latest.
Collection, it has to be a collection, and it doesn't have to process; it just has to collect.
I have been following this, and people keep having demos, but they're not really ready for you or me to use or for prime time. But it's coming in the next couple of years. I think we're going to have both the servers that use the WebRTC, so we can have a room. And then the hard part at first will be, well, there'll be nothing to record it. I want to auto record it. There's software that can auto record it, but it won't be plugged into that client, maybe, that kind of stuff. So we'll be missing some of the stuff.
I think that'll be easy enough because
there's other ways to record it, right? You can screen cap it.
You can do that through the operating system. So
right, exactly. So you work with that for a while, and we're better off. Yeah, but in the end, you want that WebRTC guy to go ahead and record it, and that'll happen in 5 or 6 years in the open source area. Mind you, I mean, there's already stuff you could pay $10,000 for that's doing this, but fuck that. We kind of have to wait for it to be reasonable. But
well, and Skype is pretty good too. Like I said, it's not like I keep thinking that these things have more potential than they might have in the sense that I keep thinking, okay, it's like the video is even dead. I mean, YouTube is so dead. You can't, there's nobody talking to each other. Nobody's making videos or video responses.
We really need that website of our own because it's become a total, YouTube is just not.
There's got to be a mechanism to inspire people to be part of the argument and make arguments. And there's got to be some mechanism that rewards that behavior in some way, and there's just somehow it's not rewarded on YouTube at all.
Do you remember way back when I had one of my sites where there'd be a video, and then if there was replies, it would break it into columns, and they got tinier and tinier. So literally, you could have it. That's not the best final thing, but I think having a graph where the icons of the faces is in there is a really good orientation. You know, people might see your face and go, I'll watch his ones, and people might see my face and watch mine, or some will go back and forth, or but just having that whole picture of an art, especially if when once dozens and dozens of people have replied dozens of times, which used to happen back in those days sometimes, you get a really neat looking, just a pretty fractal picture to look at, that as you zoom in, people are doing that. And if you add your idea of, you know, ways to just get snippets, like somehow we have snippets that feed it together, or sequence, you know, choreograph people replying
Well, yeah,
somehow.
well, look, it's the way, you know.
That's the ideal thing right
You
there.
need to create. It's like golf has a way of playing golf. There's two different ways to play it, right? There's a way where you play, all the players play, and they play, you know, whatever 72 holes, and then you have the way where it's match play, you know, where it's one-on-one. You know what I mean? You have to go through a series of one-on-one contests to get to the end, right? And
Oh, right.
you know, and so that's sort of interesting to me as a way of having a debate forum would be, is
Yeah.
like having this one-on-one thing, and then the debate, the two sides of the argument kind of filter up to the best debaters, and then you have this final conflict with the best, you know, the guy who survived the most one-on-one conflict.
Yeah.
You know, that kind
Well,
of
what did you think of my old idea? My old idea about the judging is that let people form their own judge groups. You know, you could have creationists. Creation Today would have the Creation Today judge groups with Cy Hirsch and Hovind, you know, fine. And then you know who's voting, but maybe the Sierra Club would
right.
make
Well,
one, and
I
maybe
like the
old
idea.
time vloggers would have one.
I like the idea of everybody having a limited number of votes. So you have 5 plus votes and 5 bad votes, and that's all you get. So
Okay.
you use them very carefully.
Right.
And you actually vote on the editors, right? So you're voting on the other voters. So you're saying, well, look, that's a voter who always votes stupid. And so I'm voting down the editor, not necessarily the argument. You know what I'm saying? So I think that would be an interesting, because you're really trying to find a good commentator, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what the real game is somebody to describe what took place accurately.
Well,
and so the editor, the guy who's editorializing, he's the guy you want to judge, is the guy who is rating it up or down. The judges should be the ones
do you
on
know how
trial.
Slashdot works?
Put the judges on trial, and then you'll have better judges. You know what I'm saying?
Well, do you know how Slashdot works? Slashdot has a moderation system I've never seen anybody else use, and they don't really have to kick trolls because of the way it works. They get pushed to the underground. But basically, every once in a while, you get 5 points. You can give a +1 or a -1, and then there's an adjective. +1 funny, -1 trollish, +1 insightful, -1 asshole, or whatever. And you only get 5. You might get them once every couple weeks. And the thing is, it is based on the ratings you get. If you got +1 informative, you might be a little more, and they keep that part secret, but it's also kind of obvious. And then so it works pretty good because people budget, and when they're negative, even if they're a negative person, they only have fucking 5, so they are careful. They look for the real assholes, the real fucktards, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it just slows down the people who are just malicious. So that's my argument.
Totally, yeah.
Kind of no, it's slow them down, give them less and less power, and try to empower people who are not necessarily.
I would give people 5 points a day and then subtract it if they started getting too many negative points. But also what I would like to do is have these subgroups. So like, well, in the Christian evangelist community, he gets good points. So people that go, I want to see Christian evangelist opinions, they see them. You know what I mean? And go ahead and promote everybody within their subgroup, but also make sure
I guess I'm just saying that I want to.
There's a Venn diagram where people do have to see other people's votes.
I'd rather just get rid of the idea of this idea of voting up and down and get to the point of whether it's so bad that it deserves the negative. You know what I mean? I want somebody to have a negative vote that they don't want to waste. So they only want to use it on the really, really, really bad stuff.
Okay, what I want to see,
and though, they only want to use the positive vote on something that's exceptionally good. So I only want the exceptional and the horrible to be weeded out.
But I want to see this extra dimension. I think, let me put it this way. So I want to see Trump voters liked this, anti-MRA like this, anti-natalists didn't like this.
That's another thing I think that you have to do.
That would be cool, right?
You have to profile the people involved. So the editors have to have a profile, and any dishonesty in their profile, like any inconsistency with their profile and their
Right.
voting record would
Right.
indicate, and it would indicate deception, so they would get
Yeah.
pinched off
But
for
the
that
thing is,
deception. So
dude,
it's
I
like
think
so it'd be reliable metadata. Like metadata was such a great idea for websites, but everybody cheated, right? I mean, everybody
right.
put keywords in that had nothing to do with their
You
shit.
can't really
So they
trust
should
somebody
have been
saying,
so they should have been punished for cheating. Cheaters should be punished,
and
right?
you
And then
can't really
metadata
trust
would be
someone to
great.
say they're an antinatalist or something, really, in this kind of a case. But see, you wouldn't have to, because with like a machine, with data science,
Well, I'm
you
just saying
can whether they
you could ask 10 rational questions, and I'm just saying you're going to basically be able to throw somebody in a pigeonhole based on those
yeah
10 answers.
yes. But I'm saying there's a way to let the machine do it where other people in that group, the group forms around some sort of a kernel of a definition. And if you even seed that with any number of people, you can see a correlation. And if somebody says they're an antinatalist, but they actually
I'm just
disagree
saying
with
that.
most of their positions, that's fine.
Well,
They're an
I would
antinatalist
argue,
outlier.
I would argue that the only
You
thing that
can
really,
notice that, is my
the only
point.
thing that breaks everything are the malicious and the liars, right? I mean, the only thing that breaks the
Right.
court system are bad judges and insane jurors, right? I mean, the jurors are lying. They go into court and say, "Oh, I don't have any
Right.
opinion about OJ," and of course
Right.
they have an opinion.
I guess here's what I'm saying. Look, you can set this stuff up. Now, it's a little bit hard to relate it to these words I used the first time, like you are this category or that category, but it's kind of like this. You can have a group of people that tend to favor foreign intervention, identify that group, but in the very next one case, right? You could say people that generally favor foreign intervention, only 44% of them want to go into Canada. You know what I mean?
Well,
So you can do
I
these.
think this is be rational just to have this as something we all do when we go to vote. I mean, we should also
Yeah.
be profiled. We should be asked questions like,
Profile
well,
ourselves
yes, I
as
mean,
well, though.
do you believe in Social Security? Do
Yeah,
you believe in open borders? Well, yeah, I would like the
yeah,
privilege of knowing how many people. Yes, I'm not an ogre, but yeah, I'm not willing to sit there and say burn my house down. So
yeah.
I'm not going to let homeless people live in my basement. I mean, yeah, I'm a
I
generous,
forget.
but I'm not insane. So I would put you in the insane category in the sense that yeah, you're just waiting. You're just asking people to burn your house down.
I wonder if you I forget if you like this idea or not. I know I brought it up before, but I believe that we should have permanent voting stations. We shouldn't drag voting machines around to churches and gyms. There should be, like, in the post office or in the
No, no, we
corner or
should
whatever.
vote by phone. I should just have to punch my code.
That would be a part of it.
I should just punch my code numbers
Right.
in
But
and
that would be a part of it. But you also have to have a place like the library where a homeless guy can get on the
well, I'm
computer.
just saying it's fine. Yeah, I'm just saying I don't care
But
how
yeah, you're right.
I don't care how where you put the
That's
terminals.
one reason
You
it
can
wouldn't
put
be
the
that
terminals. You
expensive.
can put the terminals in a 7-Eleven. I don't care
Right,
where
right.
you put them. I'm just
Do
saying
that as well, right?
all I need is a code number and a PIN number,
Right.
and then I can do everything from my terminal, and that's all I want. You
And
just
then and
register
so
what
part of
happened,
this though
and then
is
I go online and I can look and see that
right,
you registered what I did, and it'll say right there, yes, this code number guy voted
right.
this way, and
No,
I know exactly what happened.
and then what you do is you have like this petitions dot at whitehouse.gov, but you don't do it that way. Any elected representative, I mean, you do it that way. Citizens could put things in, but you'd have a category where every elected representative could enter a question, a poll question or a demographic question or whatever. People could answer it and it would be officially registered. And frankly, I would use that for what you were talking about. So even if you took the person and you anonymized who it was for privacy, you'd know, person number 772
Well, exactly. I'm just saying
did
that
agree to all
all
of
the
those things. Yeah.
all the data would be public, and that way
Yeah.
we could all judge its integrity. But I'm
And we
just
can
saying,
find out how people
and
really
then
think.
and yes, but that's exactly what we would do. It would be a real genuine poll instead of these fake polls, and it would be more modular in the sense that you could just change
Yeah.
the questions so easily and find out. You could get all kinds of demographic
The stream
information
of
about
questions.
what
Yeah.
the majority of people actually believe. And I mean, maybe the
And I
majority.
think you get rid of the plus or minus of statistics in this weird way. Okay, if you're asking what do people all believe, there's still the plus or minus. But because it's like a voting function, it's self-selection. It's what the people that gave a shit enough to log in and vote thought. So
That's
it's like
exactly
you can
my
ignore
point.
the people that
That's
didn't do it
exactly
to a
my
little
point. That's
degree.
exactly my point. That's why I wouldn't put 7 million questions on. I'd put 10 questions you have to answer.
Oh,
Okay,
that's an
you have to
interesting point.
answer them. So
Yeah, that's an
you know
interesting
that's
point.
it. You know, your vote isn't going to count unless you answer the 10 questions.
That's an interesting idea, but if it was really a website and we get modern, it could be something like, here's the 10 questions, how do you log in? Then I can browse all the YouTubers, different questions and stuff, but there's 10.
Well, we know
And
it. I'm just saying if we can
I would
select
like
it,
elected
that's like
officials to somehow
selecting
enter
that.
those.
That's like just selecting our news, and then the news just get tailored to us. So I'm just saying you're not going to be able to get anything that means anything, but then only the people that give a shit will answer the question.
Well, that's why I was saying I'm not a big on the authority and stuff, but if we've elected a couple senators in our state and a couple this or that, I would say the senator puts a poll question on there, once every 3 months, and that's part of their job. And our part of our job is to answer it. Now, you can't put people in jail for not answering, but basically there is ways you could get people to have to answer it. To say vote for the next election. That would be your eligibility to be able to vote in the next whatever. I believe you could compel this interchange, in a gentle way for people that don't want to take
Yeah, well,
part in politics.
I just rather that you have 10 questions that everybody has to agree on.
Well, what I'm getting is, I agree with that in principle, and I was kind of getting to where do those come from? How do you decide those 10 questions then?
Well, through the same kind of democracy, you can have just an online thing where 10 questions
They get voted up.
they get migrated to the top of
Right.
the list. You know.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's fine. I actually think I still believe more than I did when I was younger of the indirect democracy of if we could fix how we elect representatives. I like the idea of actually electing somebody we think is bright that ought to be able to have one person, one slot. That's one of the 10. Your two senators in your state, that's one of the two in your 10 for your state or whatever. But
Well, obviously, I would get rid of the whole senator thing because that's just too arbitrary. This idea that no matter
well,
whatever your population is, we're going to give 30 million people in
I
California the same representation. We're going to give 500,000 people in fucking Alaska.
well, you know what?
Alaska's
If
a
you remember,
a
right?
congressional district. Why
If
is there
you
a congressional
remember,
district and two senators?
my view on the geographic representation is I believe that there is something to doing that, but what I thought would be good is change the Senate to philosophical representation. So
Well,
those 100 people are disassociated from the states, and they're just 100 not philosophers, but you know what I mean. We vote for who we want, and you get somebody by that apportionment.
I'd rather have just two Congresses of some kind just to
Well, you think
balance.
neither one should be
Just have a
geographic?
check against something going
Yeah.
wrong. You know, if you have two of them, then you've got less
But
chance
you
of
don't
one.
believe either one should be geographic, is my memory.
They certainly shouldn't be completely arbitrary. I'm just saying that it should be one man, one vote. I'm just saying it's not one man, one vote when
Yeah.
30 million people in California have a vote that is 30 times weaker than the vote in Alaska.
Well, that's why
I
I
mean,
think
one
this.
man in Alaska
Well,
has more to say about what the Senate looks
right.
like than one man in
Well,
California.
how the Senate you can talk on, and the blah blah blah. It's
Well, I'm
supposed
just
to be
saying the
more
Senate has.
philosophical.
Well, I'm just saying the Senate has the power, though. The power is in the Senate. Okay, everything has to
But
go
I'm
through
just curious. Are you
that
getting what I'm
final
saying?
filter. Well, I'm just saying that filter is the broken filter. So that one
Yeah.
is the least representative of
Right.
all bodies. So that's the most broken place.
Right. But what I was saying is the old idea of philosophical, non-geographical. That's why the Senate is the target. Switch it into that.
Well, whether you say philosophical or ideological, I'd rather just say ideology. Yes, we should be representing people's
Well,
ideology, not
it's
their geography. I'm just saying if somebody
yeah.
wants to vote their geography, we should give them the choice to do that. I'm just saying I should have the liberty not to be a possession of the town of Mendham in the county of Morris in the state of New
Right.
Jersey. I'm not their property.
Yeah, it's too
I am the
nested like that.
important thing. I
Yeah.
own them. They don't own me.
Right. It is too nested. So yeah. Well, what do you think about? Let me run this by you. So I think that the Senate, their idea with the Senate is it's supposed to be the intellect and deliberative body, and the House is actually supposed to be like the ape part. The House is supposed to
Well,
be,
I know, but
I gotta get elected in a year. Let's kill those fuckers. That's what
well,
everybody wants to do.
we know that the problem is the two-party system degraded the Congress into meaning nothing, because we originally, America was a segregated country, right? So ideologically meant the same thing as geography, right? You lived in a Mormon town, or you lived in
Right.
a Quaker town, or
Yeah,
you
close
lived in,
enough, majority-wise.
so ideology shared a similarity with geography, and that similarity now is gone, right? I mean,
Totally.
the only way blacks get into the Congress is because of segregation, ironically, right? I mean, blacks
Interesting
wouldn't
point.
exist in the Congress if it wasn't for segregation. If it wasn't
Well,
for the
no,
fact,
I think that's a wrong
if
way
it
to
wasn't
put
for the
it.
fact that they own a geographic district, there wouldn't be black representatives.
Well, they wouldn't be representing black communities, but
I'm
they're
saying they wouldn't be. You think there'd be 50 black men in the Congress if
yeah,
black people weren't segregated? You
yeah,
really think Whitey would vote for a black man? You really think that
yes.
even if a black man ran in this town as a Republican, people would vote for him?
Well, your town, you're a fucking racist bunch of
Well,
rich
I'm just saying.
assholes.
I'm just saying. There's no chance that there might be two black congressmen if you opened it up. I'm telling you that there's no way you would have 30 or 40 black people in the Congress if it wasn't for segregation. If blacks didn't have geographic power, they would have no power.
Well, I think that might be historically a fact.
You're just. I'm just saying it's not a debatable point. I'm just saying segregation makes power. If you can segregate
We're talking about
if
gerrymandering,
you can segregate your ideology, say if I have 4
right?
million people in America that are transsexual or something, if I put them all in geographic districts, okay, where they have 55% of the majority in those districts, then they have power. They don't have any power otherwise.
Right.
You won't find an atheist in the Congress. Why?
But just
Because the atheists aren't segregated geographically.
right.
If we segregated all the atheists into the 10 New England states or something, they would have voting power. They
Okay,
don't
right.
have
Yeah.
any
But just to be clear, why you don't want.
integration destroys your power with this system. That's why our democracy is a huge fail. It doesn't give a shit about how many people you are, well, how
Right.
big your minority is,
Who cares
because
how dense
you're
your
going to lose
population
the
is?
local election because you're never going to have a majority in any district, and so you're always going to lose.
Right. Whereas if we had this philosophic representation,
Right.
you
Then
would have whatever
every
percentage.
ideological point of view would be represented
Yeah.
proportionally. We have to
Yeah,
proportionally
and the UK
represent.
system is
We
even
have to
more.
proportionally represent ideology, not hide it through segregation and abolishment of any kind of. You know what I'm saying? Your
Right.
individuality is stripped, and you're a possession of whoever the majority is. You're their possession.
Yeah. Well, I'll be right back. I gotta go to the little boy's room.
Yeah, is that what you call it now? Yeah, yeah. I call my wife that too. Um, stumbles out of the room. Yeah, you're up.
Oh, darling.
Singing and stumbling. He's going to the little drink room. That's what he's doing. Yeah, where's the liquor cabinet? Oh, yeah, there it
Where'd you go?
is. Yeah, funny. So anyway, you're not really doing physics, are we? No. Convoluted in Mendham science. Well, gee, Hoffaday, that's such an insightful comment. I mean, you're just so smart. Fuck you, till dead and such. Ugh. I mean, really, just so useless. Maybe Mendham can make a gravitation-powered dildo machine as proof of concept to his whatever that is, Lesage Gravitix. It's not Lesage Gravity anyway. Obviously, if Lesage would have been able to use the word kinetic, he would have been able to sell his physics. So fuck you in the ass until dead. Hungry hippo. We'll find out who you are eventually, and when I have my Nobel Prize, I'll make sure that the public knows to humiliate you properly till dead. You stupid, ignorant twat cunt. You shouldn't be speaking because you have no intelligence. You have no rational argument to make. You're just a dumb fuck. Ugh. All right, let's see. I don't know what that is. Like me, I'm useless. Well, great. Fuck you. Find something else to do. Do it someplace else. Fuck off, Jacob. Morgan Bile. Hi. And then he types crap. Fuck you. Till dead. Jesus Christ. Fucking humans suck. I might as well block half the day. This is not a fucking comment. Convoluted amendum science. Well, fuck you. Blocked. Assholes. Can't make an argument to this asshole.
Hello.
Oh, it's numbly numb. Where the hell have you been? Died of
Hi.
cancer or something? I figured we got run over by a truck or something.
I've been working a lot. I haven't had too much free time.
I figured that too. I said,
Anyways,
he's living in the real world, probably has some assignment. He has to go out and, repossess somebody's car or something.
it's a little better than that, but yeah, bullshit, whatever. Anyways, I was looking into, I heard in passing when I was listening to a video the term gravitational assist, right, which is this propulsion method that they've been using to reach the far orbits of Jupiter and Saturn and things like that. So I thought, I hadn't really thought about that one, so I thought I'd look at what the mechanical explanation was for that. And,
well, basically, the tricky part is that it really does work, because what you're stealing is the orbital speed. So the object is like, say, if a planet's moving around, in the solar system, so it has a velocity this way. You're actually stealing some of that velocity. You're not stealing rotational velocity, and you're not stealing anything else, but you're actually slowing the planet down and stealing some of its forward progress, which is kind of interesting. But go ahead.
Right. Well, I looked up. I found this stuff. I found this. Here, I'll screen share some stuff that I found.
Well, I probably already know it, but go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a subject I'm ignorant on. Let me just say that. I mean, I've always known about it since like Apollo 13.
Okay. I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to show that they explain it in terms of a kind of relativistic
Right.
model and it's amazing like how much speed that they're able to gain off of these planets. I just thought it was kind of hard for me to imagine it in terms of the pressure.
Well, it's like if you stay in the orbit of something, you'll start moving, with its velocity.
But they can also
So
use
it's
it
like the moon. You're going to acquire the velocity of the thing moving, and so now if you leave, you've spent time getting accelerated.
Yeah. So how would you explain the transfer of energy between the spacecraft and the planet?
Well, the planet has a ton of energy, obviously. You're only taking a tiny bit, but that's basically you're just exchanging. You're just taking some of its acceleration fish, so to speak, right? Its velocities fish in one direction. And by going into its gravity deep and hard, by getting really close to its surface, you create enough drag where you can pull those fish. And so now the planet's moving, you become part of that movement, and you gain the acceleration of the planet's movement. I mean, you became part of the planet for a split second, and in that split second, you stole some of its fish.
So, but through, what do you think is the, medium of content? Because it doesn't actually touch anything, right? So,
obviously the exchange is through gravity. So it's the exchange is through the tension created by the fact that you're coming in an aggressive angle, right? And I can't remember exactly how. You have to come in at an angle to the actual velocity, and then you have to come in really close. So then you're basically dragging the planet backwards. Your gravity is against its gravity, so to speak.
Right, but then you can double your speed like that.
Yeah, but like I said, so you're only taking a fraction of the energy from the planet, but from your perspective as a tiny thing, because you went so deep into its gravity, you gained a lot of acceleration in that moment you stayed with it. So I'm just saying
But
the only period of time that you're actually doing is when you're actually moving. Gee, that's so fascinating. Such an interesting character. I don't know what people do that for. I mean, they were literally just to find out find out who they are and shoot them. No, there's no excuse. Mental problems,
well,
they're broken.
Excuse, it's an explanation.
Okay? Yeah, they have a problem. They're broken, and they need to be shot.
But anyways, see on my screen here, it's just interesting the way they explain it, because it says there is no net speed gain relative to Jupiter. Because it's like, because they say basically you still have to have conservation, right? So if you go out of the orbit, you're going to regain that energy. I mean, you're going to lose.
But that's only the gravity part. I'm just saying the part you have to think about is the part where you're contiguous with the movement. So you're going to go in at a certain angle, and the planet's going to move to a new angle by the time your gravity turns you. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to end up even cutting it closer because of that. But the point is that there's a period of time when you're moving with it. So you essentially bonded with the matter of the planet, and now for a short period of time, it's a milliseconds or whatever you want to call them, seconds, or just a brief period of time, you're gaining the acceleration from the planet because the planet's going to drag you before, you know what I'm saying? Because everything.
But it's able to do that without any physical contact. That's interesting.
Well, I'm just saying nothing. The physical contact doesn't really happen anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Except on a quantum level, right? So we're back to the school of fish argument. But I mean, there's no.
I mean, like they don't.
No such thing. We're always force contacting with each other, right? So I mean, everything that happens through the force irritating each other. So magnetism doesn't touch a wire that the electricity gets created in. The force obviously conveys the energy into the wire.
Right, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, something that's in orbit of the Earth isn't. It's able to. There is no drag. That's how it's able to. Like satellites, they stay in orbit because of the lack of drag.
Well, I know, right? But they don't tend to stay in orbit. That's the first thing, right? Because they often do degrade. The space station degraded. They all end up degrading.
Well, it depends on how high they are. But I mean, there's also. It's just because the moon is creating another gravity thing that's moving around, so it ends up disturbing things. But I don't know. It's just hard for me to personally conceptualize how this would work. Because it's like they're saying it gains this relative to the sun. It says it doesn't gain any speed relative to the planet that it moves around. So it's only from the perspective of the sun that you gain the speed. Right?
Your speed is always absolute anyway, so I don't even buy into that relative argument anyway. But
I'm just saying that's the explanation.
But obviously, you're not going the relative to the planet. You're not going to perceive the change until you actually have acquired the change. But obviously, you're going to leave with more velocity than you got in with. So relative to the planet, you're obviously going to have a change in your velocity in the end.
Right. So I'm just like, can you see my screen here?
Yeah, I can see it, but I'm
just saying, like, the way that they explain it in this, like, I'm just saying, I think they're getting the science wrong then. Like, there's an alternate, like, you're giving it an alternative explanation, because the way that it's difficult to find this information on this topic, but I managed to find these articles, and it says there is no net speed gain relative to Jupiter. However, Voyager 1 gained 16 kilometers per second relative to the sun. So they are putting it in those. They're saying that, even after.
Well, they have to have a fixed point to say that your velocity changed because your direction is changing. You can't do it if you don't change direction, right?
Yeah.
So the only way you can do it is you have to realize you're going to have to change direction, because it's the direction changes while you're changing direction is while you're in. That's when you become a possession of the planet, okay? So you're not a possession of the planet until you start changing direction. That means until you start being accelerated into the planet, right? So it's only for the period of time that you're a possession of the planet that you're gaining the planet's velocity. So if you can understand what I'm saying is you're obviously gaining the velocity. You have your orbital velocity, but you're now gaining the velocity of the planet. This usually works best if they can orbit a few times, because then they can really gain more speed. If they just do the loop around thing, it's not as productive, I don't think.
I think that from what I read, it's always just a loop around thing. It doesn't. They don't like build it up through
Well, I think they
continue it?
do, but I think you have to do the re-enter and exit again. So they have this idea about how to get out of the solar system, you know, where you would go, you'd loop around the moon, and then you'd go to the sun and loop around the sun, and then go back around the moon, and you're then going faster and faster and faster, you know, because of those figure eights. It might even be just the Earth and the moon. You might be able to just go around the Earth and the moon back and forth, and you do it like 35 times, and then you're going, you know, 60 million miles an hour or something. Well, I guess all I'm trying to say is that for my purposes, I understood it when I realized that what it's really doing is taking speed away
Yeah.
from the planet. So the planet moves slower in absolute terms. You actually drain velocity from the planet. So that's where you're getting the energy. And you gain that because of how it affects your gravity. The amount of acceleration you have towards the planet is increased as you do your loop around because the planet moves into you, creating more acceleration into the planet, which increases your velocity. So it's like increasing, it's like you increased the mass of the planet, right, after you went in. So now you have more energy than you did going in. You know what I'm saying? So you got a certain amount of energy going into the gravity well, but now you gained a little bit of extra energy, all right, by accelerating more than the gravity alone towards the planet. So if you can get it that way, you can
Accelerating more than the gravity alone.
understand that by that extra acceleration, by having the gravity do more work to you while you're right next to the planet, that's what gave you the extra energy to go faster out. So you went in and you didn't gain anything, but you gained something when you were right next to it, and then you have extra going out.
But wouldn't you need to? Wouldn't the energy to get out require that same amount of gain?
Right, you used up the energy you got to go faster to get out, but I'm just saying you gained extra, so now you have a bigger velocity than you went in with. So I'm just saying the amount you gained going in, you gained a little bit extra because you took advantage of the planet moving. So your gravity became stronger, so you gained more acceleration into the planet, if you get what I'm saying. So you had this velocity in a straight line. The gravity's bending you. The point is because the planet's moving dramatically, so to speak, your angular velocity into the planet is increased. So now you have more than what the gravity was giving you going in, if you get me drift. It's less to get out of.
Okay, yeah.
So you're given more because the planet accelerated towards you.
Yeah, I'm just having trouble understanding what is conveying this increase, because this is increase of it's like doubling the kinetic energy. So the entire rocket.
But doubling doesn't mean anything when you think of the size of a satellite versus the moon. I mean, it's stealing a tiny bit of the moon's energy.
Right. Well, I think it doesn't. It's not so much about what you could do it with a large or a small thing. It's not about.
You can't do it with a larger. You got to have something that is massive enough for you to steal its velocity.
Yeah. No, I'm saying the satellite that's gaining the velocity. It's it could be I don't know that the possibility of the slingshot thing is a function of its size, but
it's a function of size in the sense that first you have to have enough gravitational influence to be able to create acceleration. So you have to have a difference in masses that's substantial, because one of them has to be one-sided enough to cause acceleration in you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I mean, it could be a small object, but you wouldn't be in the gravity long enough then to absorb any energy. So the point is the bigger it is, the longer you're in its possession, and the longer, so now you can steal velocity. You can create drag around it. I mean, you're just basically being dragged on it, and the drag is that you're gaining the energy. That's what drag is, right? I mean, if I have friction,
but how does that how can I understand that in terms of these shadows of I'm just wondering how is how does the directionality of that, how does the vector momentum enter into the thing?
Well, the velocity, the force of gravity is a conversion, right? So you're just creating acceleration. So it's an exchange of acceleration. So you have to understand that that's all it's doing.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's decelerating. You know what I'm saying? I mean, your left-right thing is changing those proportions, but it's equal and opposite reaction. So I guess what I'm saying is the planet is doing, let's see how to say that. The planet has acceleration towards the sun, and it has a forward velocity. So it has one acceleration and one constant velocity. And what you're stealing from is not its acceleration, but you're stealing from its velocity. So you're converting its velocity essentially into acceleration and then stealing it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to ponder that some more. I have a hard time understanding that in a mechanical sense, just because it seems like, you know, just the usual explanation is that there's
well, let's say if you took a magnet, maybe you can understand it this way. If I take a moving thing, okay, magnetic, okay, and so they're both the same pole, so the magnets will push each other. Well, then you could understand it, right? Because then you could understand that if I did it in this horizontal way, that if this force hits this force, it's going to bounce off of it, so it'll be additive. Right? So essentially you're just saying that this is going smoothly this way. I'm going to add this velocity. Now it has two velocities. I have the velocity of the thing I hit plus the original velocity I had.
Right. Well, they explain it in terms
of... So it's that simple in a way. In a way, it's just as simple as you're converting this thing's velocity into an acceleration in a new vector, and that will be combined with your current acceleration. Your current velocity. So those two will end up getting combined into a vector. So you're just bouncing off the...
But bouncing, like, there's no collision involved, right? Like, it's just...
Right, I know, but I'm just saying that you could kind of think of gravity as being either one of those things. You know what I'm saying? That it's when you polarize it, you turn it into magnetism, and it has positive and negative effects. So I'm just saying you're doing the bouncing in the opposite way, in the sense of you're creating acceleration in your satellite by becoming part of the gravitational field of the planet. So by accelerating into the planet, you're adding to your velocity.
So why doesn't that happen with normal satellites? Like,
it doesn't happen because, again, we're talking about the movement. So you're taking advantage of the time you're in the gravitational field. You're absorbing the movement of the thing you're in the field of. So you have, as long as you leave in the same direction that the planet's moving, or some vector that's in the same plane, okay, the same 180-degree plane. You have to leave in the same plane that the planet is moving in. And if you do that, you'll gain the extra velocity. If you leave in the opposite direction, you'll lose it.
Okay. In all the science articles that I could find in the papers about it, they said that it could only be explained in terms of like non-Newtonian mechanics. Like they said that basically, like, Newtonian mechanics says that conservation will hold, but so they go into this using like Einstein.
Right, I know, but that's only because, look, Newton did calculus, so he did do time variable equations, but obviously Newton didn't know about the speed of light. He didn't know, that gravity wasn't an instantaneous force. He didn't know a lot of things. He didn't know the sun was actually moving. So he didn't know a lot of things. So there's no point in saying. I think Newton's I just wrote this as a comment to somebody who was griping about Newton, because Newton was right. He just wasn't complete. Newton was kind of careful. As much as he's a lunatic, he was really careful. He didn't go saying shit until he was pretty damn sure he was right. And so Newton's just incomplete. Newton's not wrong.
Okay. It's more about his just laws of motion and things like that, like without...
Newton's not appreciating that it's inductive, okay? So my argument is that this happening of gravity is an inductive happening, right? This thing has to accelerate for this thing to feel the effect of the gravity. You know what I mean? This thing has to eat something for this thing not to be fed. And this thing then is pushed towards it. So the whole thing is inductive, and Newton didn't know that.
So you think that something that, like an object orbiting a planet, can effectively slow the planet down by being in orbit?
Well, depending on the way it enters the orbit, yeah.
Okay.
So if I go into a gravitational field going the opposite way that the gravitational field is moving, I'm going to dampen with my velocity if I stay in the orbit. If I go in orbit, that initial velocity that I took in is definitely going to dampen the progress of that field.
Okay. See, I was more under the, like, I was kind of had the assumption that it
But
was more.
eventually it'll always have to give it back, the whole conservation thing. So, we're still saying that there's an imbalance of left, there's an imbalance of right somewhere, you know what I mean? So it always has to be given back. But the point is that, yeah, you'll consume it in the creation of your orbit. I guess you could almost argue that every time you do create an orbit, you did it by consuming the motion of the thing you're orbiting. You had to move it to get caught in an orbit. So the sun always gets moved whenever something orbits it.
Right, but it doesn't gain any velocity though, right?
Well, like I said, it can be, yes, it can lose velocity or gain velocity based on where the thing came from, and that's the conversion. So it's going to convert the energy of the sun's movement into the force that actually locks the thing into the position.
Okay.
It's the locking mechanism.
Yeah, I guess I'm just the question. It's the thing for me is just the force transmission. That's the part that's difficult, like in terms of because it's just normally you need to have a contact force in order to accelerate an object.
Well, I know, but we're just saying that the real point is that we're always emanating force. So we're in a constant state of emanating a ton of force, and all that force has a character. Right now, gravity's going through me, cosmic rays, all kinds of energies going through me, and all kinds of energies radiating out of me. And
Right.
all we're saying is that when you're in the gravitational circumstance, is that there's definitely a conveyance through that force mechanism. What you end up emanating changes based on the proximity of something else shadowing you. So you're getting a different force, you start emanating a different force. So that's the transfer. Somebody throws something at me, and I throw something back at it, and now we have an opportunity to exchange what pies I mean, it throws a blueberry pie at me, I throw a strawberry pie at it, you know what I'm saying? Then
Okay.
it can end up having extra strawberry, and I can end up having, missed the blueberry pie, and so I don't have anything. I can lose something entirely because the force went somewhere else and didn't come back to me at all.
Yeah, I guess like what's interesting to me is just that, like, or what would be I think interesting to look into is just like, or I might make an interesting video is to kind of compare and contrast like your take that particular example because it's pretty interesting in terms of what it's pretty unusual, and then explain because they're explaining it in a completely different way, right? So you could sort of compare and contrast the two explanations to show that might help illustrate your model of gravity.
Yeah, I suppose it just depends on how complex that gets in terms of calculating all the different, how much
I mean, just
you're going to have to apply.
in principle.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that. I mean, I guess it depends on how explicit their explanation is, whether I can dissect it or not. But yeah. Well, I think the whole principle of going through all of these different ways of even like friction, the fact that friction's more about, a magnetic problem between surfaces. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of different examples you could go where people think one thing is happening and it's not really happening. I could almost argue that a bullet having velocity, and we think of the bullet getting weaker.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that we think that it's the speed of the bullet that's causing the degrade, and it's really how's the way I want to say that?
Well, it has more energy if it accelerates, right? So.
Well,
So
I mean,
the energy is
its velocity is what is degrading its matter. So the matter itself has gotten weaker in its bonds because when you're accelerating it, you're doing that fish thing, right? So you're breaking its perpendicular dimensions, right? Because you've added to its forward dimensions. So you've subtracted from its perpendicular dimensions. So it's getting weaker structurally as you increase its velocity. And that's what makes the bullet break apart, is that the bullet is now weak. It's not necessarily the speed of the bullet in the sense that people think of momentum being the cause.
Yeah.
The cause is that the bullet is actually physically degraded by its velocity, and that's
Yeah, I think of that. Like I think I think the way that I would think of that is like as it's making more transformations in it, so it has to reconstruct its directionality more times per cycle.
Well, I'm just saying it's
Yeah, so there's more opportunity for it.
weakened physically,
It's
and
weakened in that
so
way.
it's the weakness of the bullet that's, I'm just saying that obviously we can't, our brain is so intuitively stuck on this momentum thing that we're just never going to be able to see that. But I'm just saying that logically you can kind of understand that the bullet doesn't break because of anything called momentum. It breaks because it's weak.
Yeah, no, I get that. I agree with that. I'm just saying that I think that you could see the weakness as a thing of like, it's like a self-transforming process that has to increase in its rate. So if it's snagging things, it'll snag more little bits as it snags through time when it hits something, like because it has to cycle itself in one
It's
dimension.
not so much that it's going to hit more things. The point is that it's
more times.
It doesn't. Well, I know, but it's not really how many times either. That doesn't weaken it. What weakens it is the atomic bonds of the it's losing its dimensionality. So it's the structures falling apart. So it's physically becoming weak.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm
I mean,
not.
if I stopped its movement, just had it sit there still, I'm just saying, and if I could give it exactly the same material structure and it sat still, what I'm saying is I could put it in a frozen position and then I could actually just push the bullet and break it. You know what I mean? I could crush it because its physical structure has been weakened.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's kind of a good example of it, just because when people talk about these preposterous speeds, I don't think they're appreciating how fragile the matter gets as you go faster and faster, that the material form will degrade more and more.
Right, but like, do you think it would? So you think that there's like some calculable point where it would lose its coherence as the particular chemicals that it constituted? Or?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the element it's made out of. So that's the chemistry. So the strength of the chemistry will decide how fast it degrades, I suppose.
Right.
So the simpler the chemistry, the longer it'll last. The more complex the chemistry, the shorter it'll last. So if it's like radioactive elements or something, yeah, you could probably fuck them up by just accelerating them a minor amount.
That'd be an interesting thing to try to experiment with.
Well, they sort of have, right? They sort of put the atomic clocks into airplanes and played around, and they always change. So to me, that's like sort of evidence of the theory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that's a good example.
In a way,
So, right. So because because it's radioactive, then you can use it to measure time.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I mean, these people are just such little shits. Why are you pretending to be anti-Kantavad? Why? Why are you pretending? Why? I mean, it's just such a bogus, silly thing to do. Stronger. Well, you're just sorry. You're wrong, asshole. So anyway, who's clomping on their keyboard?
That's not me.
Yeah,
oh, it was me.
Yeah. Clomper. So Pirlo stays quiet when we get to this physics stuff. It's way over his head. When has a bullet broken? I mean, are you too stupid or what? Yeah, you're too stupid. You've never heard of like the bullet fragmenting? All that they happen all the time. They go into the brain and they break into 15 pieces because they hit some brain tissue. You haven't heard of that, retard? I mean, that's why small bullets are sometimes better, is because they.
Are you reading comments on the YouTube page or something?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, right? Is that the active page has the comments on, so you have to. Actually,
yeah, no, I'm gonna start a new channel for my Hangouts so that I can get those, because it's all fucked up with my current Google Plus, attached accounts. They don't come up even though it says so. Okay, yeah. Okay, so you're not just schizophrenic?
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's always asshole, so it doesn't really matter. I just block everybody, so it's not really very fruitful. You know, I mean, even assholes. I mean, Hufflepuff showed up and he said, what did he say? He said some kind of raggy, stupid little comment. You're just like, what the fuck? Why are you bothering?
Tonight.
Yeah. Four
You know,
words.
I enjoyed your Trump dump.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it was.
But it's funny because you have this thing of like, well, he's got this hating immigrants thing. Obviously, everybody else should be adopting that. And I disagree with you on that, but it is true that that's, you know, really the key to how he gets away with everything else.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's his only subject of any value whatsoever. Everything else is just standard Republican rhetoric. Yeah, we'll cut some taxes and everybody boat will get floated. And
Hey, you know
just
what?
like that Reagan thing, right? That worked, didn't it? Yeah.
I get the New Yorker, so it has interesting political things. But did you know, Chelsea Clinton and her
Well,
husband
disgusting. $2 million.
are close friends with Ivanka Trump, the daughter, and her husband. They're
Well,
like close friends, like hanging out playing bridge.
Yeah,
or
why
whatever.
wouldn't they be? It's an elitist
Well,
club, loafing.
I mean, must every president be like, oh, my sister's married to your brother, or we had the same fraternity,
Well,
or
look, these people.
fucking A, it's ridiculous. I mean, people
It's
need
just
to
how
wake up.
that's just how and industries just end up like that a lot of the time because
it's
families
just an
do it.
elitist. It's a game they're playing. It's an elitist game, and that's all we're stuck with is this elitist fucktards. I mean, it's just idiotic that anybody would even want to vote for a millionaire, let alone a billionaire.
Like the likelihood you're going to get into politics is far higher if you grew up in a family that's in politics, because for some people, like you know, like for myself included, like I wouldn't even know where to begin in terms of trying to gain political influence as an outsider from that whole game, you know. So I think that there's been generations of this that, you know, there is new blood that comes in and blood that goes out,
look,
right? But
the
there's kind of like a core, and that they hang out with each other to keep your enemies close sometimes, right?
But the thing is, the Trumps aren't in politics, and yet they are, because they're the ones. It's true that they are the ones, among others, that buy politicians. So
he gave millions of dollars to both political parties.
Right. So, but they're not traditionally in, but they still know each other because they're on the two sides of the coin, basically.
Depends on what you mean by in, right? Like,
well, right. I mean, I'm agreeing with you the roundabout way of they're two sides of the same coin. I mean,
yeah.
Well, they're all inheritance sluts. I mean,
but as far as Trump
what the fuck are we talking about? I mean, what is Chelsea's Clinton's? Where does she get the right to take a $2 million paycheck from the Clinton Foundation? Where does she get the right to do that?
Yeah, I know. So, but the thing is, the Trumps themselves actually be running on the other side of the coin is the final collision of politics and show business. Politics has always been a kind of show business, and Trump shows that right now it's the same. There's only one kind of show business, and that's part of it.
Well, you could say that was defined when Schwarzenegger became the governor of California. So, you know.
That was a weird one. I had just left California, so I only watched that from afar, but
well, there's been a bunch of actors that became there's been a couple actors that became presidents before that, right? Like John F. Kennedy
Well, John F. Kennedy, what do you mean? Was he an actor in
was he
college
an actor?
or
Sorry,
something?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, not professionally. He might have acted. No.
Okay.
Reagan.
He wasn't a fucking actor. He was
Reagan. But
Reagan
senators, there's that guy, I forget that Republican that was in Roseanne Barr's show the first season, and he's got big jowls and stuff, you know. He obviously, I think you could call Al Franken an actor. I mean, he's a comedian.
Yeah, Al Franken was an actor too, right? Yeah, there's been a few.
Well,
there has been, and there's been a few football quarterbacks.
Those are relevant examples, okay? But whatever. I mean, you know, let's not change the subject.
No, but my point is that Trump is an actual collision of pop culture, entertainment, and politics has now become pop. Politics was always a kind of different. It had entertainment to it, but it hadn't merged with like MTV, reality TV. You know,
well,
now it has.
I just don't agree with that premise. I'm just saying that writing was already on the wall. The day that Clinton showed up on the Tonight Show and played his saxophone, I mean, those are all steps going right there was no doubt about where that staircase was
Right,
going.
right.
Yeah,
No,
Trump
that's what I'm
takes it to a
saying.
new
Yeah, no,
level.
I agree with you, Gary. No, I'm saying there was that, or for that matter, Lynn, let's go back to Reagan, being an actor, a B movie actor, but
Yeah.
somewhat lovable. Like in a movie with a monkey.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
Well,
even know. Like I said, Reagan's probably not a good example either, because obviously he was a bit removed from his acting career now, and he had
Yeah.
also been the head of the union, and he
And been before the McCarthy hearing.
so he was sort of like,
But what about JFK?
well,
And the whole
okay, exactly. Well,
looking good on
JFK was a
TV.
professional politician. He was raised to be a politician.
But he knew how to look good on TV.
He was educated to be that.
But he wasn't educated in this to be good on TV. He was smart enough to realize that was a part of it. So he started the acting thing too, looking good on TV, letting them put makeup on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying those are little tricks. I'm just saying that I wouldn't say there was anything illegitimate about a Kennedy as a candidate just because at least that thing was made to be a candidate.
Right, but it goes by increments.
He was educated in, he read the books, so
Right.
to speak.
So
Okay,
you got a smart guy
he
that
was
said,
sort of qualified to be an ideologue. Where
right.
we're talking about people who aren't qualified to be an ideologue.
But
in the
that's
sense
what I'm saying.
They've only read 10% of the books they need to read.
Right.
Schwarzenegger, he's only read 10% of the books he needed to have read.
Oh, come on, 15.
No, but his
15 to
his
18.
skills,
15 to 18.
but it's like Trump's skills are translating into toward what could be a victory.
Well,
for
Trump
him.
doesn't read at all.
But I know, but I
I'm
don't
not
even
saying
think
that as a negative
matters.
thing. Maybe it's
I
okay.
don't think the fact that Trump's a billionaire or Trump, everybody knows his name, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I just think it has to do with the fact that he's saying something, okay, a problem that neither party wants to fix, that the majority of people want fixed.
So, Gary, other than you hating to agree.
The majority of people don't want open borders. It's a fact.
Well, that's true. I do, though.
Okay, and nobody is paying any attention to the majority who's saying, I don't care about all this cheap labor and this productivity shit and all the rest of this crap. I don't like you exploiting Chinese in China, but I don't want you to bring China here and exploit it.
Now, Gary, I know you don't like to agree, but I want to bring up two things. One, what I was saying about the showmanship is like, yeah, with JFK, I still like him, maybe too much, and well-read, had been out in the army and and had to fight for his country. And then he had I'll put a sparkle in my cleft of my chin with my showmanship. And then, but it just got bigger and bigger. People like Nixon.
You go back to you can go all the way back to Fidel Castro.
No, but you wouldn't. No, but let me finish. I'm just saying.
You go back to Roosevelt, okay? Roosevelt.
Now we're right, but now we're.
I mean, Kennedy hid his affairs. He hid his bad back. He hid.
That's a different subject.
Well, I'm just saying. The fact that it's a propaganda war, I don't think is any real part of this conversation.
No, I'm not talking about that.
What we're really talking about is the dumbing down of the thing called policy. And now policy doesn't mean anything. It just means tell people what they want to fucking hear, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether it's rational or not.
Right, so the showmanship is way more than 50% is what happened. The other thing is... what was the other fucking thing? I was going to ask you if... I'll have to think about it. Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. You're wrong. There.
No. This was an idea I think you might agree with.
No, you're completely full of shit. No, sorry. I hated it. It's good you forgot because I hated it.
I didn't totally forget. It must have been a lie, my grandma would say. No.
Yeah. It was bogus.
Let's just stick with the first one then. So you don't agree that slowly but surely showmanship, which was always part of politics,
I'm just saying that you could have had a talking dog. If a talking dog got to run in either the Democrat or the Republican primary, and that talking dog said, I think immigrants suck, that talking dog would get the votes.
Literally?
Yes. I think immigrants suck. Ruby Doo. I'm a big fan of Ruby Doo, of course, but I think immigrants should stay wherever the fuck they are because they don't like our country anyway. They rate our freedom.
I think if there was a talking dog, you'd have to vote for it, right? 'Cause it
Well,
would be
exactly.
becoming
I
a
mean,
Jesus.
it would have a terrible amount of charisma, no doubt. And it would have such stories to tell. I mean, all the butts it smelled and everything. But you know, well, anyway, I'm just saying they could have taken the ugliest, dumbest, least articulate human on fucking earth, put him in shabby, homeless clothes, and as long as
Oh, I remember what it was.
as long as he said, I don't think immigration is good for America,
I
as
remember
long
what
as he
it was.
said that, he's got 50% of the vote.
Now, Gary, let me finish to this one idea, and so you could pass judgment afterwards. But let's hear me out. Okay, as an open border advocate, and I think that the working class rightfully is against open borders because it's used to create factories that undermine them and write NAFTA. So my idea is, what if to sell a good in the United States, you have to pay the people that make it the United States minimum wage?
Well, it's still not good enough.
No, it isn't, and you know why? Because they can hire an engineer, and people that make more than minimum wage, they might be able to hire them for minimum wage. So people like me that don't make minimum wage, maybe there's a guy over there for $11 an hour that'll do it, and but I'll compete with that person because you got gasoline and the fact that I'm actually think
I
I'm
know,
better.
but the
So anyway, that's the
the
idea.
second problem, besides the fact that there's too few jobs for too many people, I mean, in the sense that too few unskilled jobs for too many unskilled people, the other element that's making this untenable, that idiocracy won't work, is the fact that technology is replacing the need for these workers altogether. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So we have more idiots, we have fewer jobs for idiots, and we have a vector where a staircase we're walking up that completely says idiots will be useless in 10 years or whatever. I mean, in Germany, they have a car plant producing whatever it is, 500 cars a day, and it's got like 73 employees. I mean, it's all machines.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's over, okay? This idea that you can be a highly unproductive guy with two strong arms and get a job, that day is over. There's no ditches to dig. There's no bullshit. You got to be able to do the backhoe thing, or you got to do the fucking 90-foot crane thing. You got to do something,
Right.
you know, a little bit talented to have fucking value. You have no value if you don't have skills and talent. So there's no use for all this fucking dead weight of ignorant idiocracy. Idiocracy has got to be called what it is. It's a disease.
Look,
it's a fucking blight.
That's
it's
true.
Blight. It's a blight. It's a blight.
Look,
you open your border to a blight, you will die.
Gary, there's a certain amount of time as that progresses, and the fact of the matter is have left a lot of potholes unfilled, and we've left a lot of trash unpicked up, and we've let a lot of parks, you know, not have trimmed bushes, and so there actually is a lot of landscaping and various things to employ those people while we migrate into the point where robots can do that.
Everybody with a landscaper.
We are not letting. I'm not a landscaper.
Somebody has to pay for it. You don't understand. There are mouths to be fed, okay? There's no capitalist model for that.
We are letting our infrastructure fall apart.
There's no capitalist model for what you're suggesting. The capitalists don't give a fuck about the damn fucking public fucking spaces. They have their private spaces. If they have their fucking country club, if they have their Augusta National, why the fuck do they give a fuck about your public golf course? They don't. So the only person that has to pay for it are the guys making a little bit above minimum wage, and they can't afford it. They can't afford all these services.
Not if you tax the rich.
I'm just saying, we're not doing that. So again, back to this argument that you got to fucking make the nest before you lay the eggs. Make the world for the immigrants to live in before you immigrate them. So I'm saying to you, until you have your better fucking society, letting idiocracy in, it's going to kill you. It's going to cripple you. It's going to make it impossible for you to create your better future. You'll never make your better future if you're blighted by disease.
Okay, got it. But let me modify the question to, let's say immigration is separate and we wall off, except for we would still import some things. What about this law where they have to pay those motherfuckers American minimum wages. That way we wouldn't do
I'm
it.
just saying that we know that as a practical fact, you can't function in the world. It's either we all do it or none of us do it, but you can't function as a business in the world if you don't go to the lowest standards that are being allowed. So as long as we allow lower standards in the world, okay,
Right.
we can't isolate ourselves and pretend we're doing okay because we're not going to have cheap cell phones then.
Well,
We're not
that's
going
what
to
I'm
have
saying. I'm
technology,
saying
and we're not going to have internet, and we're not going to have any of that shit because
what I'm
none of
trying to
that's going
ask
to be
you.
affordable if you pay somebody for the work.
Well, what I'm trying to ask you is based on that idea that I agree with. What about the idea of if you're going to have a minimum wages at all, that it be related to the wage paid to create that fucking product?
I'm saying that I'm all for having
Wherever it
businesses.
came
I'm
from,
all
Canada.
for having businesses that are not blighted by profit-seeking fuckers, okay? So I want to take all the fucking unnecessary profiteering out of business and the workers get all of the fucking money.
Well, what do you think
That
about
would be
minimum
the way
wage?
it should be. We don't need the fucking
Do
owners.
you
They
believe in
provide no
minimum wage?
fucking value. So I would get rid of all the owners. But I'm still saying you're not going to fix the systemic fundamental
Okay,
problem, which is technology has replaced our usefulness.
fine. I'm
As an
trying to ask you
unskilled,
something.
as an unskilled breathing human, I have no fucking cultural value. I'm only
Okay,
a fucking parasite.
fine. But I'm trying to ask. So now let me just ask you this, because maybe I don't even shouldn't assume this. Do you support the idea of minimum wage in the federal minimum
I'm
wage?
just saying you don't even need it if there's nobody. If you're not competing with the rich for the money. I'm saying that the money automatically goes to the workers. So let's say if I have a not-for-profit company and we have a certain number of employees and we produce a product and there's nobody taking profit out of the company except for the employees and the money to heat the building and keep it in the infrastructure intact, right? And so if we as employees, well, gee, this is not a very competitive product, so we're not going to be able to have very high wages, right? Because we don't have a unique thing. We don't have a patent. We don't have all that stuff. So we have to compete in a real hard world, and so we're not going to be able to make a fortune. Now, some other company, those workers could be building something that does have a patent. It does have some sort of thing, so they have pricing power, so they can get a little bit of higher wage. But that's what it's going to be based on. You can't. I'm saying, yes, I'd have a minimum, but I don't need a minimum if the business either sinks or fails on the fact that the people working there can make a living or they can't make a living. The product isn't going to get made if people can't make a living making it. But I'm just saying, if you have to compete with the Chinese, having a minimum wage is
Yeah.
pretty much impossible because guess what? I can't compete with the Chinese minimum
Well,
wage.
I think if you had a minimum wage only on imported items, you would automatically get that minimum wage inside the country.
I'm just saying that as a
Right.
practical matter,
Right, you see what I mean, though?
as a practical matter, I'm just saying that's going to degrade your country's capacity to do what it has to do, which is actually compete to win. It actually has to.
Well,
Actually, to gain the work, they're going to steal it. It's like states fighting over rich people. You know what I mean? They give them tax breaks to stay in the state. They give the business a huge
Yeah.
tax break, and so what happens in the end is the states lose money, right? Because they think they need the rich people in their state, but they don't need them at the high price they're paying for them, right? So they
Right.
pay way too much to keep something that's completely corrosive. Well, what I'm saying is the world is running on that now. China is dying, right? It's got huge debt, okay, and its people are suffering. How do we compete with that? If we try to compete with that, we can't, right? But if you don't compete with it, you lose. So I'm just saying the options we have here suck.
Well, I don't really believe in national isolation, but I believe that NAFTA was used to rape us, our country, and rob us of local stuff. And you know, LL Bean makes clothes local, and then Trump supporters are going, there is nobody that makes them local. No, these things are fine. You can make them local. They have McDonald's in Sweden where the minimum wage is $18 or $20 or whatever. They still open McDonald's because guess what? They make enough to pay that. fact
no,
of the
but they
matter.
might not be able to make enough in as broad a markets as they can make in some other country. At a
Right,
better rate.
exactly. They could
So they
make
can only
more.
make the money in the competitive
Well,
environment
fuck
that
them.
allows you
Think
to make
about it.
money. So
Think about it.
obviously, what works in New York City isn't going to work in Nebraska.
But that is so ridiculous. It's like, yeah, we make money, but we want to make more. It's like you make money and people make a living and
I'm
can
just
actually.
saying that that's the nature of capitalism. Because
Right,
investment capital is only let loose when it can
right,
return profit. So as long as
right,
the obligation is to feed the profit
right,
whores
right.
and not to create something
Yeah,
productive, then you're going to have this kind of system that's always going to
exactly.
be competing for whoever is the biggest crook.
Right, exactly.
The biggest crook wins, not the most honorable, decent, fun, great guy. That's not the
Yeah,
guy who wins. The biggest crook
no,
wins.
totally. Right on. Fuck the man.
Yes, fuck the rich man who
I'll be right back.
you keep kissing his fucking ass. You keep thinking there's something called generous capitalism.
Me?
No, there is. Yeah, you.
I don't think that.
Well, I heard you the last hangout you had. You were sitting there just basically saying, "Well, I'm all for people having profit, and if they're going to invest in a business, they should get a return." And blah blah blah. You're saying all that
Oh,
kind of
that's
crap.
true. Yeah, I would like to
Yeah,
defend
yeah,
that, but
you were saying all kinds of that kind of capitalist crap.
I'll be right back. That's not
Like
cap. That
somehow
is.
that
Oh,
is
you're right. No,
capitalism. I'm
you're right.
sorry.
I see
I'm
what you're saying.
sorry. Interest is
You're
capitalism.
right.
That's the
You're right.
whole
No,
fucking
you're
thing.
right. No, you're
Compound,
right.
add up compound
Wait, wait.
interest. Compound
Listen, you're
interest
right.
turns
You're right. Because I think
compound interest turns $100 million in New York real estate in 1960
right.
into $9 billion today.
Right. So here's the thing. You're right, actually, because I believe in this George's thing, which is capitalist and labor oriented, but it hates on landlords. So you got to discriminate the
Yeah,
capitalist
well,
from the landlord.
your whole land thing is just
Landlords
too
are
flaky.
different than
Well,
capitalists.
they're capitalists, trust me. They're very
No,
good.
no, they can be
They're
the same.
very good capitalists. They're just doing the capitalist whore. I put some money in the machine gives me more money back. That's all a
But
capitalist
that's not
is.
how
That's
capital
all a
works.
capitalist is ever doing. He's taking more out of the game than he
Yeah,
ever
you're
puts in the
confused.
game. That's the nature of the capitalist game. Put less in, get more out.
But the point is, you have to discriminate between the land ownership and the contribution of
I don't want to get into this. I don't want to do this land thing. I did videos on it. I think it's the whole concept that land has
well, by silly you
any
mean
meaning,
brilliant. I agree.
any meaning beyond any other commodity. And if you tax one commodity, the money will move. If I tax gold, people will buy silver. If I tax silver, they'll buy wheat. If I tax wheat, they'll just buy something else. So you're just going to change the commodity that they'll own.
But that's the
They
point.
own commodities to reservoir their wealth. The ownership of the commodity just represents a holding. It's their way of taking possession of wealth. And they don't
Gary,
care. They don't care what it's denominated in. They don't care what the value is. They just care that they own value. So if you tax any part of it, they'll avoid that part.
okay, but Gary, that's the special thing about land. Right? You can't change the supply of land no matter what.
And it
Right? The
doesn't matter.
supply of land is
The
not going to
supply of
change no
land
matter what.
is not
Now,
relevant. It's just not relevant.
if you tax
What's
luxury
on the
yachts,
land? What is on the land is the only thing that has value. The land has no value.
but the person that owns the land controls what happens on it.
It doesn't matter.
It does. They use
No,
it
it
to
doesn't.
extract
No, it just
all of
doesn't.
the
It
value.
doesn't. It doesn't change. It
Does.
doesn't. I can buy land cheap.
How can you be so wrong about this?
Yeah, I don't know how you can.
I think
I
of
don't know how
you
you
as
can't understand that
I
property
think of you as
taxes.
politically astute, scientifically not so much, but politically, and you're so
The
wrong on
biggest
this.
obstacle to people the biggest obstacle for people homesteading is the fact that, especially in a town like this, you got to pay $9,000 in property taxes. So every year you have to come up with a minimum salary of $9,000 just to have a piece of property.
Well, here's the thing. You know what? You have a point where you're living. It would be very hard for somebody to live and not be filthy rich, right? Because the
I'm
unimproved
just saying,
property.
any place you're going to live that has families, you're going to pay for those kids. You're going to pay to raise other people's kids, okay? And you're going to pay out of the ass, because you're going to pay for all their little crippled kids and all their autistic kids and all their ADD kids. All of their problems are going to be your problems, and you're going to have to pay thousands of dollars for their problems. So you have to go somewhere where there's no families, or you're going to get killed.
All right. All right. I'll be back in a second.
Yeah, well, whatever. Locally down. I fell over again. Drunks. So anyway, there was physics happening here. It is funny. I guess it's okay to once in a while stray off into the bigger field and get lost in the chaos of the bigger field. But yeah, well, it's just so many things to juggle mentally. And yeah, people just don't appreciate the work it takes to be a smart person. Yeah, it really is. It takes a lot of work to analyze all this stuff, figure out all the where stuff goes in and where stuff flies out, blah 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 blah. And all these ignorant cunts just sit there and they read a half of a pamphlet once, and they have no knowledge of any of it. They just sit there and critique. I think your hair's too long and your idea doesn't sound like my favorite hero's idea, so therefore it can't be right. Tesla was the smartest man that ever lived on Earth, and he proved it by writing down absolutely nothing and accomplishing absolutely nothing for the last 50 years of his life, but picking his nose and feeding pigeons and living in a hotel room provided by corporate interests that just felt sorry for him because he squandered all his goddamn money trying to make a death ray. Yes, Tesla, who wanted to be the father of the death ray, who tried to sell the death ray to foreign governments. Yes, what a great man. Let's make a death ray for world peace. Yes, if we make the giant gun, then we'll have world peace because we can just point it at everybody and say, shut up. Yeah, that'll fix all the problems in the world, the giant gun. Ugh. I said, what's the point of me answering your question? You obviously haven't paid any attention. I mean, obviously the basic structure of the universe on the largest scale is the fact that there's a bunch of this shit moving the speed of light. A bunch of little tiny bits are banging around, flying around in all directions. And it might go forever and ever and ever and ever. That might be the fact that there's just a bunch of little shit flying around at the speed of light.
Come back.
Very good.
Gary, I had another subject, which is basically I haven't been making any videos, and partly it's because a lot of the videos I made, all this relativistic skepticism, is stuff I invented in my 20s, and then what I've thought about since then, I haven't really made videos about now, ever since June, really. I am thinking more about things that seem to relate to me personally, but then again, maybe they relate to others. But so I feel have suspected that maybe I'm schizophrenic, but just functional schizophrenic, because I hear voices.
Yeah.
Don't you hear voices? I hear voices that say often when I wake up cranky in the morning, not often, well, often, I don't like people and things, it says to me.
Yeah,
Which is kind of cranky.
I actually was schizophrenic, so it did, in the sense that I was in the dramatic sense of the word. So when I was 9 years old, for 1 year, I was schizophrenic.
That's the other thing. When I was 10, I remember hearing voices watching me and bitching at me.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like it was some kind of just voices in my head. It was a demonically control freaky,
Bitchy.
horrid voice. I mean, the voice of, it's like it's like in the Lord of the Rings, you
Yeah.
know, when the gray guy does his
Totally.
special
I know
voice
exactly what
thing
you
and
mean.
it stops everybody from moving and they all get nauseous. Well, that's the
Tries
kind
to
of
seem
voice
all
I
scary.
had, this demonic fucking voice
Yeah.
that kept saying, jump down the stairs, jump in front of that car. I mean, it kept trying to kill
Yeah.
me, okay? And it was trying to kill me.
Right. So here's the thing why I think I ended up functional is because I remember like walking along. I was 8 or 10, and I was hearing this voice. It was like a committee of idiots, adults going, yo, and this, and oh, and you're not that. And I remember just laughing at it because I already didn't respect adults as particularly smart. And I just remember, really? Is there spirits in my head watching everything I do, judging me? Well, have fun, motherfuckers. And it was kind of like, so I didn't take it. I mean, but I had to deal with it. I've had to react to it. So,
Yeah, that's the
but is
funny thing.
everybody like that? Maybe everybody's like that, and we're all dysfunctional schizophrenics.
Yeah, I don't think everybody's broken the same way, unfortunately.
Well, no,
It'd be,
for
it'd be
sure
very
not. I had a
fortunate if
broken
we were all
childhood.
if we're all broken the same way. Then there'd be
I had a really weird childhood. I would say,
there'd
yeah,
be a lot
I'll
of
cop to being especially broken, but that doesn't mean everybody's not in some sense. But my dad, for example, said when I was asking him about the inner voice, you know, where people think stuff over and you hear your own voice going, maybe I should go to the store, maybe I shouldn't. My dad's like, no, I don't have that. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you're fucked up, then. What the hell?
Well, yeah, I think that's just some people aren't really aware of their own conscience.
Aware
You
of
know
it,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
They haven't
How
spent
could it be
any time.
possible?
They haven't spent any time being something like not drunk or something. You know what I mean?
Or listening to themselves.
Well, I'm just saying, if you spend a little bit of quiet time with yourself,
Well, my
you know,
dad's real
eventually it'll start
philosophical.
creeping into you. You'll start analyzing. Hey, I'm thinking at this moment. Why am I thinking that? And then you start thinking about why you're thinking that, and then you
Yeah.
start, you know, you'll
But my
start.
dad was real philosophical, but he only ended up thinking whatever he believed in the end. He didn't realize, he never looked at the fact that he was thinking.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Is being philosophical is like
Yeah.
saying he's very ideological, but he's not foundational. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
It's kind of
exactly.
philosophy.
That's how it turns
It's
out.
a
Yes.
kind of philosophy to get to the roots of it. It's almost like quantum mechanics being different than physics. You know what I mean? You're trying to do the small thing, not the big thing. You know,
Yeah.
you're trying to get to the foundation of the machine.
I went through a long time where the voices bitching in my head, I realized that they sounded like voices from real life, people that had bitched at me as a child. And I
Yeah,
thought, well, oh wait, that's not a weird coincidence. That makes perfect sense.
it's hard to say exactly how I
You
got.
have to wrap them up in your head. You have to go, okay, you aunts and uncles, you are on a planet. You're welcome to your opinion, and I can hear it because I don't have a choice, but it doesn't mean I buy it.
Yeah, I mean, you just get kind of lucky to survive those kind of things. Because, like I said, I had a dramatic event that, you know, they're caused by my, you know, psychosis, and I didn't get any professional treatment. But the very fact of the event was sort of glaring evidence to me that I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
You mean like a wake-up
It's,
call?
yeah, it's like this thing that just basically said you can't be this anymore because this isn't going to
Well,
work.
what do you mean, like in your 20s, or what are you talking
No,
about?
no, it all happened in that 1 year. I mean, I was only
Yeah.
psychotic for 1 year, and then I was.
Oh,
And
as
then
a little
and
kid.
then I was just depressed. So yeah, it was like the best and worst year of my life. You know, 9 to 10. You know,
Yeah.
because I mean, we landed on the moon. Lots of cool things were happening. The world looked like it was going to be something, and I was degrading. You know, I was getting more and more uncomfortable with being alive. You know, so by the time I was 11, I was pretty suicidal.
So wait, how old are you? You're a little older than me, but you're 52?
56.
Oh, that's right. So you're actually that kind of middle generation between me and those the young baby boomers. My parents, 18 years old, were the oldest baby boomers, so all my aunts and uncles were like your age. Not
Yeah.
as stupid as baby boomers.
Well, it's kind of an interesting time. I mean, I don't hate the fact that I got to be a child of the 60s and 70s.
But your sister's younger, right? Was younger.
No, we all were born within 4 years, so it's all close.
But you're the oldest one, so there's no real
No,
baby
no,
boomers.
my sisters are older, but my one sister.
So they're actual baby
my
boomers.
sister, one of them is a twin sister, so obviously it's the same age.
Oh, I forgot that if I ever knew that.
Well, that doesn't, you know, it's
But
I mean,
well, no, it's interesting to me because I made a big study of baby boomers, and sort of my parents were the first thing, 18 years older than me. I'm born in 67. They're 50 and 49, and then a lot of those parents had like up to 6 kids. And by the time they're in the end of the 6 kids, those kids are growing up at a different time. They didn't have a chance to go to Woodstock, but it was the 70s.
yeah, well, it
It's
really is a different kind of world just because, all this matters, when you're raised by somebody who knows what they're doing versus people who don't. I mean, my parents were real old, they're late 30s when they had their kids. So, it wasn't any kind of reckless thing, but they were really,
right.
I mean, they were just so cliche, you know what I mean? They were just like father knows best kind of people, you know what I'm saying? They're very
What'd
nice,
your dad do?
very nice, but very boring. It
What
was
did
actually,
your dad?
the joke is my father was a chemical engineer,
Right.
and
That's
we
right.
we spent every weekend together because we go fishing and all that stuff. But he never taught me a fucking thing, which is amazing. We didn't have one. We would talk about the lawn and how the trees are growing or some other kind of bullshit, but he never explained anything scientific to me ever, which is amazing.
Well, maybe he didn't like it.
I would,
Like
well, I'm just saying, yeah, he just didn't have any. I think he thought I was retarded, so he didn't think I was worth investing in or something. But
yeah.
because it was really quite funny, because my mother did see.
Well, he could
My
just not have
mother
enjoyed his
was
work.
exactly the opposite in the sense she thought I was going to be a scientist because I was breaking everything in sight to figure out how it worked, right? So
Yeah.
when I was 10 years old, my mother bought me one of those Radio Shack build your own electronics thing,
Yeah.
and I was addicted. Once I got my hands on that shit, then I was addicted. And so it was like my mother who appreciated the fact that I had this interest in science and mechanics and all that kind of thing, which is kind of just funny that my father didn't see it. My father didn't see it, but my mother did.
Yeah, it's sad. You people without a broken home, you don't really get to see what your parents are really like. Because when you watch them go through a divorce, it's all open.
Oh
It's
yeah,
all revealed.
it just gets so well, and you also get a taste of it in the sense that it ain't so great having parents because they lie to you all the time. The fairy tales about
Well, and they can't help it, right? Because they
God's
believe that shit.
they just got to make up some kind of crap. They
Oh,
just tell you some
yeah.
kind of lie to shut you up, and you're
No,
just,
it's so easy for me to imagine how religion started by daddy, the narcissist, even if he didn't believe it, figuring, I got to shut this kid up.
yeah,
I can
exactly.
see you at night.
Just come up with some kind of crap, and just
My grandfather tells me what you're doing, and then suddenly it's a god 10 generations
yeah, you
later.
just turn the Aesop fable into a real cartoon, and then you just make it into.
Yeah, I don't think the people.
There's a real talking fish.
The people that invented our religious stories, I don't believe most of them believed it.
Well, I think the original stories they did believe it because they had no choice. I mean, they didn't.
Well, I believe schizophrenic.
They didn't know what a microbe was. They didn't know what thunder, lightning. They didn't understand the weather. They didn't understand.
No, but I believe it was like this.
Anything. How the fuck could they not conclude there was a god?
I believe it
the
was
whole
like
world looked like it was trying to kill them all the time. They had to think there was a god.
Well, see what you think of this. I believe it was like, hey, your schizophrenic cousin said a story about Poseidon. But then your dad, who knew that guy was schizophrenic, was like, yeah, Poseidon's going to kick your ass, Johnny, if you don't fucking start doing what we tell you. Poseidon told me, so it was a guy that knew better that used Poseidon. He promoted that shit.
I know, but those, so it was just a test because they just found the theory that you couldn't disprove. So the boogeyman, you could prove that the boogeyman wasn't behind a tree, and you know what I'm saying. So they just had to wait for a story that you couldn't disprove. And so once they threw everything up in heaven, then how are they not going to prove God's not in heaven? How are you going to prove that? So they just made a story that was undebunkable. Because
it's a mix.
It made it so intangible to our real world that there was no way to prove it wasn't true.
One thing I've been following for 4 years on YouTube is the growth of the narcissistic personality disorder vloggers, which started off with this guy Sam Fankin describing it, and he is a narcissist, and which he admits he's diagnosed, but he hates narcissists and he exposes them. And then now there's a lot of people that grew up with allegedly or actually whichever narcissist parents, and so there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And it's a very interesting thing because I think we're starting to see there's something to this NPD format that might even apply to you and me a little bit, you know, because it's all in degrees, whatever, to all people, who knows, or that we're reacting to it. And that's really what's running our society. And that's the problem.
Well, I mean, we're not consistently, we don't come out of a cookie cutter, so we're not cookie cut. So yeah, every one of us is raised by a bunch of different environmental circumstances that condition us into different kinds of monsters, you know, different reflexes,
right,
sensibilities, and those can be compatible or incompatible with reality. And so the point is we're not really testing our steel against reality. We're just testing it against other imbeciles and lunatics. So it sort of is the asylum being run by the inmates. You know,
well, okay, but here,
inmates are percolating out of themselves the biggest crazy fuck and saying, that's the best way to be human. Be the biggest crazy fuck there is.
Well, yes. And the crazy fuck thing, it has something to do with what is a pattern we call narcissistic.
Oh, I know, but that's inevitable. Like, narcissism is just allowing yourself, okay, to be self-indulgent.
Well, like,
so
okay, here's an example.
If there's a force that humbles you, then you won't be a narcissist, right?
Yeah.
So all you need is a humbling force. So I'm just saying that what I'm trying to say is if we actually did raise kids by some Dr. Spock method, you know, some mythology that made it clear that yes, the kid will be informed that they're a brain and the brain has certain weaknesses, and we're selfish
by the Mr. Spock.
We're selfish by nature, and the only thing that protects ourselves against being an asshole is the fact that you're intelligent enough not to be an asshole, not because you feel it. You won't feel, I don't want to be an asshole. Like, that won't feel good. Being an asshole will feel good. Not being an asshole won't feel good, and you have to understand that you have to.
Why do you say that, Gary?
Well, because our nature is selfish. That's why I say that.
No, but wait a second. Wait a second.
It feels good to fuck my neighbor's wife.
You look at the world and you see that happening, but I happen to believe that you feel bad. Like, for example, taking advantage of a woman. You think, oh, I should, but that would be great. But then you don't do it because you know it would actually, it feels bad.
Well, that's more obvious. I'm just saying, obviously taking advantage can be veiled in something where it doesn't look harmful. So I'm just saying I can make it so it doesn't look overtly harmful.
Okay, so tell me about this. So, for example, with this MPD parent idea, one thing that is a narcissistic parent pattern, allegedly, that I do believe as well, but is they take children and they make them into black sheep or golden child. They make them into, they demonize the child, or the child is a golden child. And in fact, it can switch back and forth. You could be a golden child, do something embarrassing or whatever to the parents narcissistically, and then that's a common pattern, right? Haven't you seen that? Your parents don't sound that way.
Obviously, people never have children.
Your parents don't sound that way, but in Mendham, there's a lot of parents like that.
People never have children for a good reason, so that's the problem. So yes, automatically there's going to be levels of that. So it just depends on how stupid the parent is not to understand they're creating a human being, and everything they do has to be calculated. So if you don't understand that every one of your reactions can't be a reflexive reaction, that you have to act without reflex, and that you have to act intelligently if you're going to give your kid character. So you can't use this might makes right thing. You can't do the beating thing. You have to do the incentive thing. You have to teach your kid how to be a human being, and people aren't doing that. They're just reacting to the kid they got.
Well, you describe both your parents as investing in you. You say your dad maybe thought you couldn't understand shit, but he still invested in you at the level he thought you could take, and it was kind of insulting maybe that it was a look.
Well, I don't think he did. I think my father, actually, I think my father, although my father was a very decent man, I think he could be labeled as a narcissist in the sense that I don't think he had any real interest in being a parent. So I don't think it's something he did because he had a passion for it. He just kind of fell into it. And so he played the role. He knew what the role of parent was, and he fulfilled his obligation. So my father was a man of contract.
My grandfather.
Contract, you fulfill the contract. And so he fulfilled it basically in word only, though. You know what I mean? He didn't fulfill it with any passion.
Here's my view on that. My grandfather was definitely a narcissist, but I grew up in an era where I know a lot of guys, and especially my age or younger, that ditched out on their kids. So the guys that are allegedly narcissists that hang around and don't really love you but spend time camping with you because they feel like, well, he's my boy, that's actually pretty good compared to what we've seen in the last 30 years.
Yeah, well, I think my father liked my company, so I'm not saying my
Right.
father didn't like me. He
Exactly.
liked my company, but I'm just saying
Exactly.
he wasn't
He
too
couldn't connect.
he wasn't too interested in making me into a person. He didn't spend any
Right.
time giving me any human skills.
I would say let's call
He
that.
knew how to run in the world, and he wasn't explaining to me how you do any of it. So I didn't
would
understand
say
how he was being a human because he wasn't explaining to me how he becomes a human.
whatever the reasons for that, or whatever the real explanation, let's call that kind of pattern a personality pattern or disorder. You know what I mean? I think it's like it's forgiving as well. It's like we all are coming from our point of view, and especially if a guy stays around and makes sure that his kid is well fed and enjoys his company, you shouldn't really be that critical. And yet that lack of being able to connect with someone you brought into the world, which I had strong connections with my parents, but they turned out to be full of lies.
Well, look, the
So
bottom line is that I think you're better off for the bad parenting because then you have to develop character because the good parent is
right.
necessarily probably going to make mistakes because they're not going to allow you to make mistakes. So
Yeah, I
if they
believe
don't
that.
allow you to make mistakes, then, because they're going to try to protect you, then
Right.
that protection is just going to make you less of a human being.
Like this
So
nephew.
in a sense, that lack of compassion and that lack of sensitivity to how hard things were for me, that lack of ability to understand I was going crazy, okay,
Right.
is also what made me the person I am. So I can't completely find that objectionable because I never would have done the introspection that I did if that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, same with me for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I would have been much thinner a person. As a person, I think I would have been less of a person. If it wasn't for that experience of having to see what that world is from
Well,
that
the
dark
thing with me is when I was like 10, my dad kidnapped me. We were supposed to go to lunch, and then it took me for like 4 or 5 months, and we never talked about that. We never worked that out. And that was different. Yes, I became stronger dealing with that, but I didn't deal with it until my 30s when I moved to Hawaii to be near him and then found out what he was really like, which I still care for him, but I found out about all my parent worship was lame.
yeah. Well, it is harsh to have to, because as kids you do kind of you're impressed by their power.
Yeah, he has a lot of things. I still am the way I am because I worshiped him, and it turns out he wasn't really that way. He just
Right.
put a front on, and I copied something he never actually did, kind of thing. It's like,
Well, the weird thing about there's so many weird little things that fuck with your head, right? My father looked like Clark Kent, right, from Superman.
oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, right? Didn't really look like Superman, but he looked just like Clark Kent, especially in his suit. And he was tall and he was kind of broad, and it's just kind of funny, that I really had moments when I was a little kid where I'm just wondering, well, does he really go to work every day, or is he to go to like the Superman studio and
Yeah.
fly around and do all this shit, you know. But it's that it just was more conducive to me, having the same problem is that
Well, my dad.
I felt too in, you know what I'm saying? He seemed like
Yes.
he could do anything and I could do nothing, so it
Well,
really
my
gave me a
dad
horrible
nurtured that.
inferiority complex.
He nurtured that idea that he was a Superman, and he also nurtured that, my birth destined me to be a Superman, which was the biggest mind fuck that again I overcame
like
at 34.
You're Neo in the Matrix, huh? Yeah,
Yes, right?
yeah.
I think a lot of people, and again, this is the religious. If they've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years, that's where religion comes from. You're the born, you're the chosen. That's why everything is the Matrix is how many of those things are you're the chosen,
Well, I'm just saying, yeah,
you're
we all
fucking
live.
Harry Potter. How many
We
of
all
them
have to live that way, right? We all
you're
kind
the
of live.
chosen?
We all live kind of, seeing ourselves in better roles than we're in. Like yeah, I'm the key maker. That's how I look at me. I'm the key maker.
Yeah. Well,
I'm.
I like that idea. I still like it. I see the comfort, but I really think it's possible to say, well, how about we're all the key makers? So even though I'm anti-group thought, there's something actually better about going, I'm part of a chosen generation than as I'm the Neo. And
Yeah,
yet
no,
that's
well,
also bullshit. The
I would like
chosen
to believe
generation
that.
is the problem the
I mean,
fucking baby boomers have.
obviously, that'd be great if we lived in that kind of world. But we can see that on YouTube. There's few people. How many people can even have this conversation?
None.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm just saying that there's so little capacity to find people that you can actually talk about, all this psychosis and this brain function and this the whole bizarreness of our whole psychology. They can't go into it in any kind of depth at all because they haven't lived any of it.
Hey, speaking of psychosis, you know Unseen Perfidy, and he was a bunch of other names and all of his shits going on?
Yeah, well, I heard that part in your room. Where Matt. I just found that kind of funny. I made fun of it a little bit just because here you are, you just lost your job, and Matt's whining because a friend of his turned into a creep, and I just thought it was funny. Like that's not hardly a tragedy, is it? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Was it Kalins? Was it Kalins or Napalm that was talking about his
that
disappointment?
was Napalm.
Napalm.
That was Napalm. Yeah, Napalm was friends with this Perfidy guy, and they were kind of close friends at the time, and that's where the whole division between me and Napalm happened. Like we were friends, and it was the Perfidy guy who fucked that friendship.
Oh, that's not surprising. Yeah, he was a toxic guy. He was one of these guys that with me, he was just immediately, you're dishonest. I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I had a whole big fight with him over the cigarette tax, because he just kept defending the 800% tax on cigarettes, and I'm like, how can you defend an 800% tax? It's retarded.
He's an example of why 70-year-old Hillary Clinton is somehow, oh, obviously she's the most logical thing for 2016. He's the kind of guy that's perpetuating that, just kind of what he hears and then pushing it forward. And it was the same time with Skeptical Heretic, and he said the same thing because I had said in a hangout of yours, I was drunk at the time, and I had said, well, I'm going to pwn him. And then he used that as a reason to not have a debate with me. It's like,
yeah,
dude, what? What
yeah,
a lame.
But well, I'm just saying that obviously that YouTube was more viable than the YouTube that exists now. I mean, like I said,
Yeah, no,
it's almost intractable to everybody.
that was the last gasp. Dude,
everybody has completely intractable positions.
We absolutely need our own website now. But the thing is, YouTube, one good thing about Google is you can use YouTube now from your own website, including the quick capture. So I haven't had a time to do it, but the API now is like you can have every feature of YouTube on your own website, add your own shit, like, these graphs and things. And we need to do it. I just haven't had time to get back to it, but it's getting easier and easier. So when I do get back to it, it's like less work to redo some of the shit I did than it was the first time. So I think it's still going to happen, but I don't know. I mean, I would love if somebody else did it, but I haven't given up because we have good ideas and it's not that hard. It's getting easier and easier, but
yeah, I just think there's so much noise. There's so much competing stuff. Like I found it with these physics groups, right? So I went to these Google Plus groups, and some of them have 100,000 members. And you post a comment in a video, and it's just nothing. It's just ignored. So it's like it didn't even happen. And you're just like, there's information overload. So everything is so, there's just too much of it, and none of it's filtered. And so it's everywhere and completely, it's all just a popularity engine. So, it's all Fruit Loops.
yeah.
The same cereal is on the shelves at every store. I mean,
Yeah, no, when YouTube started, it was kind of for us, and now it's for the popular kids at high school.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying there's so much of they only have so much time and all this other stuff that people have, all these competing interests. But I'm just saying, yeah, everything's getting diluted by the noise. And so there's so much noise to
Well,
real
plus
value.
a lot of the debate is going on Twitter, and I'm just not.
Yeah, I can't
not
do
Twitter.
Twitter. I just
Yeah.
can't do that. No, yeah, that's not my. You can't have an argument in tweets. You know, you can't.
No.
You can't tweet a rational argument.
Nope. It's for comedians and stuff.
Yeah,
Where,
yeah.
oh, nice one-liner, Steve
Exactly,
Wright.
exactly. It's just for witticisms and tear downs and hatchet jobs and.
Yep.
You know, you do drugs, eh? You know, that's all.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I know there's a subculture that wants actual debate, extended debate, but
Yeah, I just think you have to
it's
make it a
hard to-
show. I'm just saying it's there. I think you can capture the market. I'm just saying you have to capture it hard. You know what I mean? You have to play the game, and you have to play it to win. And so you have to make a show out of it. And you have to give it all the formula elements that are necessary to create
right.
public interest. So you have to make it a survivor show, except it's actually got value in it. So you
Yeah.
have to make it like the Olympics, except they're curing cancer. You know,
What I was trying to go
for instead of just swimming fast, they're doing equations fast, or they're doing something useful fast.
Well, what I was trying to go for with the idea of being able to annotate videos is to crowdsource selecting the highlights. You know what I mean? So then you could play and get the highlights of one video and the highlights of the responses and the highlights of the responses to that. And, I think that could still work, but it requires, finishing
Well, I think
idea.
annotation has value. I just think there needs to be parallel arguments. So there needs to be arguments that are made in rooms like this where they're loose, and then you make the even better argument where you make a 30-minute video where it's a tight, and then you have and it gets tighter and tighter. So you just condense everything to the like, look, once you agree with this, then you can move on to this next thing, then you can move on to this next thing. And I sort of did that with a little site I made at Logic, where I just make these videos starting with a premise and getting to the end. So I start off with, do you believe in God? And I give yes or no choice. And if you believe in God, then you go do the video where I argue God. And if you don't believe in God, then you can move on to evolution. And what do you think evolution means? And then if you think evolution means, singularity, then okay, I'll argue that. And if you think evolution means dumb forces, well, then you can move on to step 3. That kind of logic in the video presentation.
Right, but you need a little piece of software so that you could easily browse that.
Well, I'm just saying I did that. I got yes and no buttons and all that kind of shit. There's links on my videos to it. But anyway. It works okay. And I'm just saying I barely started, but I'm just saying if I refine the videos, I think that'll be also a good presentation argument method. But I think it's also good for debate. So I think that idea of having debate over specific axioms, go through the rules first, go through the whole thing so you know where the disagreement is. I mean, we're fundamentally never going to agree if somebody's a Christian. You know what I'm saying? Because they're always going to fall back on God did it. And, whenever the argument gets tough, they're always going to resort to, well, Moses said or something. And so there's no argument to have. So, I mean, you have to figure out that you have intractable differences in your fundamental perception of, like, if you don't believe there's an absolute truth in the universe, like an absolutely correct way to describe something, then how can we have a conversation, right? Let's just admit that, okay, you live in a different place than I live. Because the place I live, everything is there to be described, and you can describe it accurately or inaccurately. So if you don't believe that, then what's the point?
Well, okay, to veer off into that, the point would be that let's say all descriptions have to be inaccurate. There can still be more versus less accurate.
Well, I'm just saying that the essence of something is the essence of it. It is what it is, and it can be described in terms of the facts of what it and how it interacts and what it's interacting with and what position it's in and all that kind of stuff. It's there to be described. I'm just saying, if you can't agree that there's a described reality, then, like I said, then I'm just opening the door for you to just make up anything anytime.
Well, I think that's what experiments are. Scientific experiments are things that can be described well enough that I could reproduce it or imagine it.
I understand, but reasonable doubt doesn't mean anything if we don't have reasonable premises. So I'm just saying, once the premises become unreasonable, then the concept of reasonable doubt doesn't become meaningful, and then you can't have a trial. You can't have a trial if you don't have a standard of reasonable. You understand what I'm saying? It's like if I go into a jury and I have some notion that the invisible man exists, okay, and that the invisible man often commits crimes and makes it look like somebody else did it, well, then everybody's going to end up innocent, aren't they? Because it's always going to look like the invisible man did it. He framed him. The invisible man framed him, obviously.
Yeah.
That's all I mean, is that we have to get to the core brokenness in people's perceptions, and this whole free will thing. It's all of these things are basic foundations to it. If you don't get that we're just programs, then you're just opening the door to this mush that somehow there's some underlying truth, and there's just not. There's just programs. There's just descriptions. Words are just descriptions. Words are their definition, right? So all we're doing when I exchange words with you, I'm exchanging definitions with you. And so it's all dependent on how accurate our definitions are.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a Nietzschean idea, is that really all our philosophical conversation is really just kind of a debate over words, and actually also controlling those definitions.
But that's exactly not what I'm
Like
saying. That's exactly what I'm not saying. That's exactly what I'm not saying. So
because you're trying to deny it.
No, what I'm trying to say is that unlike Nietzsche, I'm saying the fundamental truth is worth knowing. It's not semantics. It's not meaningless.
Yeah.
There's fundamentally, it's important you get these descriptions right or wrong. If you get them wrong, your logic is catastrophically vulnerable. And if you get them right, means that you can do logic. Obviously, I don't think Nietzsche had anything called logic, because his fundamental philosophy was, I can't see anything here to do but be a giant praying mantis, so that's what I'm going to go do, is be a praying mantis.
Well, that's not what he said,
He
but
did.
anyway.
He did say it. He did say it. He said there's nothing else but nature. He said it.
Yeah, but
nothing. There's nothing. There's no other game but the natural law.
He also said, though, that for whatever reason, people that like philosophy valued truth. And even though there was no obvious reason to value truth, he also valued truth.
Well, I mean, there's obvious reason to value truth, because it's the only way you can do logic, and logic is the only way you can accurately describe something. So
yeah, but he was saying that doesn't.
Inaccurate description is failure. So you can understand.
Yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't. But valuing truth doesn't necessarily lead to wealth or a family.
I know, exactly. It only leads to you maximizing your function.
Yeah, but what he admitted
and then that wasn't have anything to do with his agenda. Because
but that's hard to explain. At the end of the game,
all he had to say to the human race was, just figure out what's in it for you and then grab it.
Except for that's not what he did. He said, no, I'm a philosopher, and philosophers like pursuing this truth stuff. He just admitted that he couldn't say it would make him wealthy. He couldn't say it would get him a woman.
Exactly what he
couldn't say.
He wanted it to, though. He wanted it to. He wanted to be Kant. He wanted to be a successful philosopher. He didn't want to be an unsuccessful.
He thought he deserved that.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, and so again, you're talking as if this isn't just a sick narcissist, and that's all.
No, but my point is that. No, but that's beside the point. The point is that regardless of the result that he would have liked to get for pursuing truth, he wanted to pursue what he saw as truth anyway.
I know, but the point is his idea of truth was that as long as truth is invisible, that somehow we can't see it. And that argument is idiotic. So
no, that's where we disagree. He did think it was
visible. What truth that isn't visible through nature did he believe in? He didn't believe in anything called charity. He didn't believe in anything called trying to do the right thing, because it always failed somehow. Somehow trying to do the right thing was somehow a mistake.
Yeah, no, that's just not. No, I don't see that he thought that.
He critiqued everybody who ever tried to do the right thing. Everybody who did anything for a good motive, for a non-personal, selfish. He was a Randian, for fuck's sake.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
God, no, he wasn't.
Yes, he was.
There's not Randian. Oh
Yes,
my
he
God,
was
that's so
completely. He
insulting.
saw the future. We'll give him
So
that.
insulting.
Well, we'll give him that. He
You're
saw
lucky
the
this is
future,
your room.
and he wanted to have sex with Ayn Rand, and
You might have sex with it. Well, who doesn't? You know, just as a kinky
yeah,
kind of thing. Just as a kinky
me.
kind of, come on.
No, I saw her interviewed. I saw, I remember I was alive back then. When
I mean, it's like you would know what it was like to have sex with a zombie. That's
that's just for
interesting.
personal. Okay, for a scientific experiment, yes.
Yeah, exactly,
As a scientific experiment, I could muster up some passion to figure out what hell is really like. So, so yes, I'll go visit hell. I'll go fuck the skankiest cunt in the universe.
So I guess you might have seen that Mr. Cropper is out and about doing a lot of hangouts and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I think he's, he's like many people, right? They have vocabulary and they seem articulate, but they can't get the foundational stuff right at all. So his whole foundational understanding of the mechanisms is all wrong. So,
well, he's almost given up too because he's just being a trolley. He's not even trying really.
yeah, well, I guess I thought his way of arguing was always kind of futile in that sense because it was kind of aggressive and he wasn't at all.
Really, I never got at that in the past, but maybe it was always that way. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying he's pro-capitalism. He's wearing it too much on his sleeve. It's like me being a socialist. I can argue, look, I'm not, I can do the anti-immigrant thing. I can do this. I can do that. I don't have to stick to Stalin's book or Marx's book. And it's like Cropper was too interested in defending invisible hand, and you know what I mean. He had established these axioms as truths, like the mega capitalists. It's almost like the people who are big fans of Tesla, right? It's like Tesla is this mushy science at best, right? It's just barely a few paragraphs of statements by Tesla. It's just so little foundational science. There's an ether and everything's electricity kind of a thing, but it's just this vacuous kind of thing. And they establish it as a truth, and yet it doesn't have any form. You know what I mean? So Cropper's just doing this. Capitalism is intrinsically and fundamentally good, and so every argument has to be anything that's not capitalism is bad, and that's where I think you just forget about it. The truth is something a bit different. I mean, the truth is that yes, we need incentives, but it's like any mathematical formula. You have to complete the formula. You know what I mean? You have an incomplete formula, you're going to have infinities and you're going to have all kinds of breakdowns. So you have to have a formula that can catch all those things. And this idea of selfishness works is just intrinsically and fundamentally ignorant. I mean, selfishness doesn't work. I mean, the idea that we have to give people a self-interest to do social good, that makes sense.
Well, how do you think you figured that out?
We feed people's self-interest, but you can't just open the bar and say eat all you want.
Well, but so how do you think you figured that out? Because then that's the way anybody could figure it out.
Yeah, well, that's what I tried to explain is the going to the first principles. And then you start just recognizing first what we are as things that consume, and then we're things that have skills that can produce. And then you just start valuing what is the value of your production, and well, that's supply and demand. And so then you figure out, well, how do you create a supply to meet a demand? And then you get into the whole capitalist thing where you wait for some guy who wants to make a profit off the whole thing, and that's the funding of the production. That's the whole system breaks down, because then that's the you know what I'm saying? That's the compound interest argument, or the accelerated wealth. You know what I mean? If wealth is if you're generating income, then you have to justify it in terms of you contributed something productive to justify that salary. Otherwise, it's just a welfare check. You know what I mean? It's just money that's going to make problems. It's not going to make solutions. And feeding the rich is just way too expensive. So as soon as you and put that in the equation, then the equation breaks, because then, like I said, it's the biggest crook wins. Then it becomes about who can lie cleverly, who can write a contract where I get to pollute your country, you can't pollute mine, that kind of stuff. It just becomes a game for shysters.
Well, the fact that all of our presidential candidates have close ties, it just shows how there's not really that many billionaires or 100 millionaires. There's not that many people involved that don't know each other.
Yeah, well, it's not even just knowing each
There's
other.
not that many of them.
It's the fact that they don't just know each other, they belong to the same entitlement club.
Same clubs, literally the same clubs, like golf clubs.
Yeah, exactly. So, they have theirs, and they're just looking to get more. I mean, obviously, Trump he didn't mean to get elected or anything. He was just saying, I need to make more Trump money. So I got to get Trump in the news, so I'll run for president and get my name out there and make more money.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think
it worked a lot better than he thought.
I don't think he had any intention of winning, and I think he's seeing now the huge liability of what it's going to mean to him to win, because it's going to mean
or lose.
It's going to mean he can't even control his own businesses anymore.
He really can't.
He's going to really hate you. You imagine Trump actually giving the reins to his son or to somebody else to run his business?
I know. Yeah, no, exactly. It's lose-lose for him now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way he wants that scrutiny. And I don't know how.
But I think he's invested in going with the presidential thing.
I still don't even know how a presidential candidate can run for president and not show their tax returns. I mean, isn't this a really foul, precedent to establish? I mean, when has somebody been allowed to run for president without providing their tax returns?
I know, not forever. I don't know when that started. My whole life.
Well, I'm just saying, that's just such a fundamental accountability issue. How the hell can you get away with that?
I know, and it's funny. It's because he makes too little money and doesn't give enough of it away.
Well, I'm just saying, could you imagine if we actually see the tax returns, and just saying, I mean, and he has to somehow explain why in 8 years he hasn't given any money to his own charitable foundation. He has his own foundation, a perfect mechanism to get tax write-offs, and he's giving it no money in 8 years. I mean, but he gave $2,300 to AIDS research. The guy with $10 billion he actually wrote a check for $2,358. I mean, you got $10 billion. Are you writing any checks like that?
I know, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, what? That couldn't have happened. It's like the day Michael Jackson got a trophy and a whole press conference because he gave some group $25,000, and it was almost like laughable. $25,000. Wow, yeah, you deserve to be on the news. So it's a fucked up world. People are too stupid. And that's the real problem. I mean, people are just dumb fuckers, man. People are dumb.
I suppose.
Yeah, let's see you say that honestly and get elected.
Well, Trump's the closest I've seen.
Well, I know, but that's
I love my low education voters.
That's the dumb pleading to the dumb or something, or the dumb leading the stupid or whatever the fuck that is. But it's insane. I love that's just so funny they can get away with that too. I think the Chinese people are great people. I mean, so if anybody else talked like that, they'd be like, "What do you think? China is like, they have a machine and it makes Chinamen like it makes Coke bottles or something." All the Chinese people are, they're short and they speak Chinese. It's just so. I love the Chinese people. I do a lot. I
like Trump. I love the Chinese people. They love me.
I do a lot of business with the Chinese people.
I love them. I wrote down how much I love them. People say I love them.
I've been exploiting them for years. They're fun to exploit. They buy all kinds of my shit.
I definitely do like it. I mean, I think I don't want to stop, trading with Asia, but I do think it would make sense to have not protectionist laws, but you know, like my minimum wage idea, I think basically it would be like, oh, well, never mind. We're not going to make clothes in Bangladesh if we have to pay,
Well, yeah,
because people will do it here for
let's go
$8
back
an
to
hour.
my incentive argument. Let's just say that we start off with like a graduated incentive plan, and we just said that businesses that are able to do this, this, and this, meet these higher standards, they get a subsidy. So, we reward the businesses that do business as ethically as possible, and we punish in the sense that they don't get a reward the businesses that don't, like having the tax code. Just graduate something like that. And I think that might even be enough of a incentive engine, because I don't think business taxes are productive anyway. So it'd be a great way to weed out, to winnow out the whole idea of business taxes, to give people exemption from taxation if they do treat their employees well and they do make a quality product and they don't pollute the environment. And they don't lie and they don't phone call you randomly and they don't do any of that, slimy shit.
I'd be into that.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, I think you could fix it with little incentives. But I mean, that's really all we're talking about, right? Is incentives. You got to incentivize civilization. And nobody's making that speech. Nobody's talking about how we have to incentivize people to be civilized. That's how you make a civilization, is you make it rewarding to people personally if they're civilized. So, and you punish people for being really uncivilized. So you give all the little trolls a spanking. Take away their dessert. No Jello pudding for them. Says I.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the way to fix things. Have a plan. That's the idea. Have a plan. It's just be really nice if somebody running actually had a plan. That'd be so cool. That a plan that wasn't, totally preposterous. The funny thing is Trump and Bernie Sanders both had the same idea about repatriating $2 trillion worth of money from corporations. And I just thought that was such a funny thing to say, just because what would the implications of that be? You know what I mean? You take $2 trillion worth of money that companies basically have invested in other countries. Isn't that going to knock $2 trillion out of the stock market immediately? I mean, what other kind of impact could it possibly have but to drive the stock market into the toilet, just on the face? And then the whole idea of it ethically, like this is somehow stolen money or something. It's not stolen. The companies do business in other countries. Those profits should be sort of independent from, why should it be our profit? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not like the corporations are doing something horrendously unethical, that we're going to steal $2 trillion from them. So, but I just thought that it's such a gimmick.
Yeah.
Again, no plan, no plan to balance the budget or do any of that shit. No, we're just going to steal $2 trillion. Let's kill some foreign leader and steal the assets of the country. Yeah, that'll solve our problem. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, we'll just do another Libya. Let's just steal $2 trillion from Libya again. Oh, they're probably out of all their trillions. That's right. We stole them already. We already stole their money. But yeah, nobody can get anything right.
What do you think about the Iran deal?
Well, again, I'm just saying nobody can get it right, right? The truth is we gave them back their money. Okay, we didn't pay them anything.
Yeah.
We gave them back money we stole from them. I mean, fuck.
And we didn't even steal it. It's not like we lost the money and had to pay them back. It's in a fucking account where
well,
we're
I'm just saying
there.
that we did steal in the sense that they didn't get stock market value for their money, right? So we gave them back less money because we sold their stock and converted it into cash. So we did diminish the value of their money. Yeah. So in a sense, we stole their profits from them.
Yes, right. The interest.
Yeah.
To me, it's funny because the Iranians, first of all, they're now one of the few stable governments over there, because I don't really count Saudi Arabia. And they are historically influential in that region. And that has to become the case again. I don't see any reason to fight that Iran is influential in the Middle East.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a good role model for anything. So again, I still think it just fails. They need a role model. I mean, what we need to do is take over some little place like Kuwait and actually turn it into a democracy of regular Arabs or something, and get away from all this Islam crap. So actually have an Arab, like an Arab Israel.
Well, I thought that's what they were going to
Like
do in Afghanistan.
Well, Afghanistan is hopeless because that place is full of the religious nutters. I mean, the most fundamentalist of the Muslims own Afghanistan, so you got no hope there. Pakistan, you got some hope. Like half the Pakistanis want to just be Arabs. They don't want to be fucking Muslims. I mean, they want to be Arabs first. Let me put it that way. You know what I mean? They want to be Pakistanis first. They don't want to be Islamis first. But you know, again, the fanatics have taken over. I mean, look, you know, when you think about an Arab country actually having a woman president, I mean, that was kind of amazing. You know what I mean? And you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like almost earth-shatteringly amazing. I mean, that must have so offended so much of Islam, you know, to allow a woman to be president. Oh. So Pakistan sort of had hope to me, but now, like I said, they've sort of let that go all fanatic too. But it's just the whole thing of poverty creates fanatics, right? We know if America goes broke, we know what's going to happen, right? Everybody's going to go Christian again. They're all going to become Christian nutters. I mean, you know.
Yeah, we're at the edge of that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're burning out with all this energy.
Well, I just don't. The Alex Joneses are still roaring away, so I don't think they're burning out. But
you don't think the Alex Jones is burning out?
No, I don't. I think idiocracy is winning.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's on the move. The average citizen is less and less engaged and less capable of doing anything but just reading headlines. And they're not being provided anything more than headlines anyway, right? Have you read news stories lately? They're just horrible. There's not a fact in them. You know, they can't get anything right. You're just like, fuck, why did I bother reading this? There's no facts in it. It's just a bunch of shit. Somebody said this, and somebody made a funny face, and we thought the funny face meant they were offended, but we're not sure. I mean, it's just mush. Somebody gets shot and nobody knows how it happened. I mean, it's just, you know, I don't know, bullet hit him, I guess. You know,
I just noticed what time it is. I better go to bed.
Yeah, you really should. It's probably good for you. So anyway, yeah, well, good luck and stuff. I'm glad you mentioned June. I think of June now and then. You know, I mean, it's none of my business. It's not my kid or anything, but you know, I did see her in a couple of the background shots. So you know, here and there, and you know, I do have fond something or other. So I'll just throw that in for whatever it's worth.
Well, thanks.
You know, I mean, it's you know,
I think about her all the time.
Yeah, I understand. It's you know, it's you know, it's rough.
All right. Well, take it easy.
You
Have
too.
a good fall or whatever's going on now.
Well, I'm not doing that yet. Fuck you.
I'm seeing it. We've had some rainy couple days. Winter is coming.
Yeah, well, not here yet, so I'm not paying any attention to that yet. Fuck the calendar. Okay, well, good luck also, and until next time and such. No, he already left. I'll wave after he's gone, and through some sort of time dilation, it'll end up perturbating. It'll bounce off of Saturn and end up in yesterday. Oh, that's wacky physics, isn't it? Yes. So anyway, you know, the commenters are all assholes, right? Preach it, brother Mendham. My name ain't Mendham. Them immigrants. That's really brilliant. Fuck that. Gary, what's the basic structure of the universe? Oh, I already did that one. So you have had authority hallucinations, not just your own inner dialogue. Well, like I said, it was when I was 9 years old. Yes, I don't know how relevant it is, but yes, I had a bad year. Yeah, very bad year. What was your father's upbringing like? Well, he's an only child, grew up in Canada, and kind of wealthy. Kind of a nice. He grew up in an ideal location. You know, summer house on a lake in Canada, big lake, and city house in St. John, New Brunswick, and Bay of Fundy and stuff. I mean, just a nice place to live. But you know, my father got blown up in a chemical accident, and well, he got 800-degree acid sprayed on him, and spent 2 years in the hospital. So gained a little character through that experience, no doubt. Well, I haven't gotten to the PBS quantum eraser crap, but obviously all that crap is crap, so it doesn't really matter. It's everything they say on that channel is pretty much crap. They don't base anything on it. I love when they reference experiments done in 1996 or something, and you're like, what do you mean? They haven't redone the experiment since 1996? You know, come on, we don't. It's like we have a little bit better technology now. You think they could redo it with new technology and find better answers? But I think they like leaving it fudgy and underdone because that makes it propagandizable. But yeah, they're getting into all this kind of dual photons, brother and sister photons, all kinds of silly shit that just is, you know, spooky action at a distance crap. And that's all it is crap. So anyway, it is late. Sorry for the physics people. Piro doesn't really play along. It's nice talking to him now and then, so it's not a terrible thing. So I'm not disappointed. But yes, it's not physics. It broke my train of thought. So I'll have to get back on the train and do physics work because I have to do physics work. So it is work. I mean, people just think I'm just sitting here reading this out of some sort of book. And I had to write all this. I had to think all this shit first. And, you know, it really isn't a minor bit of juggling to figure out all the nuances and to figure out why this is right and that is wrong. And I think I've done that. And, you know, fucking people have no appreciation. You really go suck. You just fucking suck. Yeah. Somebody helps you out by giving you the better explanation, the truth, and all you got is insults. I mean, it's just really bad form. No arguments, just insults. So anyway, I'm not going to record any of this crap in the comment section. It's all ugly shit. Yeah, some guy has a swastika. Yeah, really brilliant. It's an Indian symbol of love. Yeah, fuck you. You're a piece of shit. You're shitted by a shit eater on shit. So yeah, dung beetle shit. You're double shitted shit. Even triple shit. But anyway, you're shit. And somebody should flush you. Anyway, yes, that's enough. Thank you for those who play along, and I don't know exactly if there's anybody actually doing that, but whatever. Thank you to anyone who deserves to be thanked. There, that's a good way to put it. If you deserve to be thanked, I'm thanking you. Yeah. If you deserve to have a good day tomorrow, I hope you have one. Something like that. But if you don't, I hope you don't. Fucker. I hope you get exactly what you deserve. How's that? Exactly what you've earned. Yes. I hope you get exactly what you have earned. Sincerely. I sincerely hope that. So if you've earned some good things, I hope you get them. Doesn't really matter what I hope, obviously, but you know, it's a gesture. So all we have is gestures. So sometimes it's all we got. I don't have any other rewards to give out. I don't have $10 billion, but either just Donald Trump, lying scum. Anyway, till next time, and such. Oh. And stop broadcasting.